Chapter 2600. Of the 36 great demon lords present, Kalang had the sharpest senses. He sensed that, at the edge of the black scarlet land, there was a powerful aura approaching them at an astonishing speed. That aura was very unfamiliar, but also very powerful. Suddenly, Kalang's expression changed. "That's not one of us. I can feel his murderous intent. He's coming for one of us." The expressions of the great lords were very strange. Who among them was he coming for? Since he was coming for one of the great lords, then they must know what was going on here. And he was still coming towards them. Was he courting death? Admittedly, the owner of that aura was very powerful. But there were so many great lords present. None of them were easy to deal with. Judging from the other party's aura, the other party should be about the same as the top experts among them. However, if the other party were to come here alone to cause trouble, it would mean that he was looking down on the group of overlords. "I'll share the other party's aura with you. See for yourselves who knows this guy," Kalang said. At this moment, all of the great lords sensed this aura. Suddenly, Shane Kazlak stood up from the stone chair. A fierce light burst out of his eyes. He remembered this aura. Even if he turned to ashes, he would remember it. Shane Kazlak raised the scarlet token high up. "I want all of you to attack with all your might and bring that guy to me, dead or alive." Although no one submitted to Shane Kazlak. But no one dared to disobey the scarlet token in Shane Kazlak's hand. Kalang glanced at Shane Kazlak and said, "I can't use half of my power here." Shane Kazlak snorted coldly. How could he believe Kalang's words? Kalang was his old enemy. They had fought no less than 1,000 times in 10,000 years. So he knew Kalang's strength like the back of his hand. Within the range of the volcano of despair, Kalang's strength would indeed be affected. However, it was only a small impact. At their level, the environment had very little influence on them. Unable to use half of their strength. Obviously, Kalang didn't want to help him. Previously, Kalang was the first to notice the other party's arrival. That was because he didn't know who the other party was targeting. But after seeing Shane Kazlak's reaction, everyone knew that they were here for Shane Kazlak. Meanwhile, the other party definitely didn't know that so many great lords were here. They only knew that Shane Kazlak was here. At this moment, a great lord whose entire body radiated a multicolored glow said, "The other party is very fast." This greater demon overlord was called the Divine Sense Spirit. It wasn't in a physical form, but a pure spiritual body. Although he could not detect the aura at the edge of the black barren land like Coltrane did. However, within a certain range, he was able to sense all of the other party's movements. "Faster than me?" A great lord with a smooth, 3-meter-tall body asked confidently. He was a wind spirit, a creature born from the wind. He was born with the power of the wind. No one at the same level could surpass him in terms of speed. "Let me create some trouble for him." Wind Spirit raised his arm. For a moment, the clouds in the sky surged. Qin Zhao could already see the super volcano hundreds of kilometers away. Without a doubt, the greater demon overlord's nest was that super volcano. However, the volcano was really frighteningly big. Too big. Even from hundreds of kilometers away, he could still see the outline of the volcano. Moreover, there wasn't just one aura there. Other than the familiar Shane Kazlak, there were a few other mixed auras. There was more than one greater demon overlord there. Chen Zhao's expression changed. Should he retreat now? Chen Zhao thought about it. If he retreated now, he'd lose a lot of face. He'd traveled thousands of kilometers to hell, a world away. In the end, he'd run away without even seeing Shane. This was too embarrassing. Chen Zhao thought for half a minute. He finally made up his mind. He was indifferent to life and death. If he wasn't happy, he'd fight. Of course, Qin Zhao didn't know that there weren't just a few, but dozens of greater demon overlords in the volcano of despair. If Qin Zhao knew, he'd definitely turn around and leave. Even so, Qin Zhao didn't plan on charging right at them. Qin Zhao suddenly turned and flew into the sky. "Huh! He sensed us." Ko Lang frowned. He seems to be flying high into the sky. His escape route is really strange. The greater demon lords didn't plan on intercepting him. For one, the distance was too far, and the opponent was a speed type. At this distance, they couldn't catch up at all. Even Wind Spirit, who was most confident in speed, couldn't. Moreover, the opponent was at the same level as them. If they couldn't surround him, they couldn't do anything if he wanted to escape. So, instead of doing that, they might as well save some effort. A strange look flashed across Ko Lang's eyes. He sensed that the owner of the aura seemed to be flying higher into the sky. He wanted to go outside the void? Could it be that he was panicking and didn't know where he was going? After all, even greater demon lords of their level couldn't adapt to outside the void. Why was he flying outside the void? Ko Lang was filled with confusion, but he was also wary. It was very unlikely that the opponent was crazy. If he wasn't, he must have some other plan. No matter what, he had to be on guard. Ko Lang's senses were very far away, but he couldn't sense the exact situation. The spirit of consciousness, on the other hand, had a limited range. As for the other greater demon overlords, their perception range was even more limited. Ko Lang glanced at Shane Kazlak but didn't remind him of the exact situation. At the same time, Chen Zhao realized that Hell's atmosphere was much thicker than Earth's. Even at a height of 100,000 meters, the air here was still very abundant. However, the cosmic radiation here was much stronger. Chen Zhao continued flying up. He wanted to see how thick Hell's atmosphere was. When they flew to a height of 300,000 meters, the thinness of the air here was equivalent to that of 30,000 meters on Earth. This was about the right place. Chen Zhao planned to use a meteor here. When he was on Demon Island, he'd used an incomplete meteor once. At that time, its power was equivalent to a small nuclear explosion. At this height, he didn't know what the effect would be if he smashed it with full weight. Chen Zhao was eager to try. He activated the third stage of the coalescence technique. Chapter 2601. It took 50 minutes. Chen Zhao finally completed the meteorite. Then, he basically didn't need to do anything else. With the acceleration of gravity, the meteorite would have enough time to gain great kinetic energy before it hit the ground. Of course, Chen Zhao didn't just do nothing. Instead, he used all his strength to pull the meteorite down. This allowed the meteorite to gain more initial kinetic energy. Soon, Chen Zhao realized that he wasn't pulling the meteorite down anymore. Instead, he was being pressed down by the meteorite. The meteorite fell faster and faster. It was already heating up from the friction with the air. The speed of falling seemed to be beyond Chen Zhao's imagination. More accurately, it was out of Chen Zhao's control. What did it mean to fall from 300,000 meters in the sky? The potential energy from the acceleration of gravity was 1,000 times more destructive than something of the same mass falling from 30,000 meters. Plus, the power of Chen Zhao's small world had increased by 10 times. So, the meteorite's weight had also increased by more than 10 times. Chen Zhao cursed inwardly. He immediately used large amounts of gas to form a barrier around him. Chen Zhao wasn't sure if he could withstand such power if it hit the ground. But he had no way out now. Even if he wanted to give up, he couldn't stop. Colin stared at the sky. Suddenly, a meteorite appeared in everyone's vision. "What's that?" Colin pointed at the meteorite falling from the sky. "It's that guy. He didn't escape." Shane Kazlak only saw a huge fireball. But he didn't sense the incoming danger. The fireball was indeed huge, but it wasn't enough to make him feel danger. He had the title of Lava Demon to begin with. His resistance to fire had also reached the extreme. After all, he could eat and drink in lava. Of course, his resistance to fire wasn't weak. So, he didn't care too much about the huge fireball. As for the other demon lords, they didn't care too much either. They were stronger than Shane Kazrak, not weaker. Similarly, no one would be afraid of a mere fireball. Even if the fireball was ridiculously huge. Some greater demon overlords cast a defensive barrier on themselves. Some relied on their powerful physical bodies and didn't care about what was falling. Only Coltrane, who had no way of knowing what was falling from the sky. But it definitely wasn't a fireball. After all, he had been paying attention to Qin Zhao in the sky. Qin Zhao had only been in the sky for around 50 minutes, and he had created a fireball to entertain everyone? Stop joking, no one's brain is flooded with water. So, Colin silently used his strongest defense. However, he could not suppress the strong uneasiness in his heart. The falling speed of the fireball seemed to be a little unexpected. At this time, a greater demon overlord revealed a solemn expression. That spell seems very dangerous. No, that's not a fireball. We can't let it continue to fall. We have to stop it. Use the undying barrier. A greater fiend overlord raised an immortal barrier above the volcano. At this moment, the meteor touched the barrier of immortality amidst the rumbling thunder. Wow! The greater fiend overlord spat out a mouthful of blood. Quick! Meteor was even faster than the greater demon overlord and instantly fell into the lava pool. All the demon lords covered their eyes. Bang! A sun rose from the Black Land. Even millions of square kilometers away from the Black Land, one could still clearly see that extremely bright ball of light. The light could evaporate ordinary demons directly. Light was the first to be released, followed by a shockwave that began to spread in all directions with the volcano of despair as the center. With the power to destroy the heavens and the earth, it destroyed everything in its path as easily as crushing dry weeds. The first to be hit was naturally the volcano of despair. The peak was destroyed in an instant. Everything was gone in an instant. In the moment of the collision, Qin Zhao was the first to be hit. Qin Zhao's skin kept cracking and blood kept spurting out. Even though Qin Zhao was in his strongest state, even though he'd prepared everything beforehand. But now, Qin Zhao really felt like he was going to die. Under the huge impact, his body's functions were on the verge of collapse. Qin Zhao could not see anything. All his senses had been destroyed too. All that was left was soul-tearing pain. Just then, Qin Zhao felt the nirvana flame ignite in his body. He did not activate it on his own. He was forced to activate the nirvana flame. This meant that Qin Zhao was really close to death. Only when he was close to death would he activate the nirvana flame on his own. This feeling was very special. It was Qin Zhao's first time in this state. The pain disappeared and was replaced by another feeling. His flesh, blood, nerves, skin, and organs were all redistributed and reassembled. Finally, the familiar feeling returned. Qin Zhao suddenly swung his fist and shattered the thing wrapped around him. Qin Zhao opened his eyes again and scanned around him. He realized that he was standing on a broken eggshell. Qin Zhao was speechless. Not only had he learned the phoenix's nirvana flame, but he'd also learned hatching. Qin Zhao knew clearly how long had passed. It should have been around a minute. This meant that Qin Zhao had used a minute to recover from his near-death state to his peak. No, this state was even better than his previous peak state. Qin Zhao glanced at the crater. The volcano of despair was gone. Instead, there was a super crater with a diameter of 3 kilometers. There were also the corpses of demons of various sizes around it. Qin Zhao realized that these corpses were all at the level of a great lord. However, there were still a few demons in the small world. They were not dead. Instead, they were heavily injured. These were all his spoils of war. Qin Zhao grinned. But just then, the ground not far in front of Qin Zhao protruded. A demon burrowed out. The demon did not seem to be injured. Then a white figure descended from the sky. Kolang looked at Qin Zhao. He'd sensed danger just now. Therefore, he decisively flew up into the sky, even though there was a similar impact in the sky. There was also the same impact in the sky, but the impact in the sky was clearly much weaker than on the ground. This also allowed Coltrane to escape death. Just then, a few more great demon lords appeared one after another. Perhaps because of this or that method, they didn't suffer any injuries, or they avoided the disaster with light injuries. Other than the heavily injured and dying lords, there were 8 great demon lords in total. These 8 greater demon overlords still had their full strength. By now, the 8 demon lords had surrounded Qin Zhao. Chapter 2602. Qin Zhao looked around. Lava demon Shane Kazlak was among the 8 demon lords. Qin Zhao was surprised that Shane Kazlak was unharmed. At least apart from his arm being shattered, he wasn't hurt at all. All the demon lords stared at Qin Zhao in shock and anger. He looked around at the black, barren land that was like a plain. The original volcano of despair disappeared, and so did the original mountain range. They were the only ones left. Only them. This kind of terrifying lethality was completely beyond their imagination. Even though they were demon lords, the power to destroy a country in an instant still terrified them. 5 of the greater demon overlords were unharmed, while the other 3 had minor injuries. The other dozen greater demon overlords were already on the verge of death. Some of them were just corpses. As for the others, there was no sign of them. They had been killed by Qin Zhao's meteors without even a speck left. However, the remaining 8 great demon lords clearly had the same hatred for Qin Zhao. After all, if Qin Zhao escaped, he'd be a huge problem in the future. Qin Zhao didn't have to do anything else. All he had to do was shoot at their territory. Their territory would be like Shane Kazlak's, returning to the state before liberation. 8 great demon overlords. Qin Zhao narrowed his eyes. He didn't think that he could face 8 demon lords at the same time. He'd thought that if he used his killer move, he might be able to kill Shane Kazlak and the other demon lords. But he'd underestimated the number of demon lords gathered at the Volcano of Despair. He'd also underestimated their trump cards. The current situation was very disadvantageous to him. Absolute freeze! Colin attacked first. Instantly, Qin Zhao felt his limbs lose the ability to move. His body was sealed in a block of ice. Qin Zhao even felt that all the cells in his body had lost the ability to move. Colin used his killer move right away. He had to use his full strength now. He'd hidden the truth just now. He'd been monitoring Qin Zhao but hadn't told his companions. If the Lord Alpha were to find out about this, then he'd definitely die without a whole corpse. So, he had to use his full strength now. He could show his attitude and lower his companions' suspicions. Qin Zhao panicked. They were indeed terrifyingly strong. No greater demon overlord could be underestimated. Qin Zhao's eyes widened. The flames of Nirvana. As Nirvana flames burned on Qin Zhao's body, Nirvana flames also burned on the outside, burning the ice inside and outside at the same time. The greatest power of this absolute ice seal did not lie in its low temperature, but in its ability to cause a living being's bodily functions to lose their vitality in an extremely short period of time. However, the Nirvana's flame instantly activated the frozen cells. Qin Zhao quickly regained his mobility and smashed the ice with a punch. Qin Zhao pounced at Kalang. At this moment, Anfanelli launched his attack. Roar! A terrifying sound wave swept toward Qin Zhao. Instantly, Qin Zhao felt dizzy. Blood spurted out of his mouth, nose, and ears. The sound wave left a trench thousands of meters long on the ground. The ditch was as smooth as a mirror. Qin Zhao's skin was being torn apart by the sound wave. Qin Zhao tried his best to stay awake. At the same time, he created hundreds of black balls in the shortest time possible. Go! Bang bang bang, the black ball hit Anfanelli's body. Enduring the pain, Anfanelli temporarily stopped his sonic attack. However, the damage the black ball could do to Anfanelli was extremely limited. The wounds on Qin Zhao's body were also healing quickly. Just then, Qin Zhao felt an unbearably hot pain from his back. Looking back, he saw Shane Kazlak stabbing at him with a huge flaming sword. Qin Zhao immediately dodged Shane's attack. At the same time, he punched the flaming sword away. Just as he was about to punch again, a figure blocked Qin Zhao's way. It was a greater demon lord with muscles all over its body. His limbs were thick and the bulging veins on his skin looked like old tree roots. The demon lord blocked Qin Zhao's fist with his arms. Although he managed to block Qin Zhao's punch, his feet still skidded hundreds of meters on the ground. Qin Zhao was surprised that someone could actually block his punch. However, the muscular demon Greater Lord was similarly shocked. Such terrifying strength. He'd actually lost to Qin Zhao in his area of expertise. Just then, an arrow shot toward Qin Zhao. Qin Zhao actually couldn't dodge the attack. In fact, he didn't even notice the attack before he was hit. From the corner of his eyes, Qin Zhao glanced at a tall and slender demon lord not far away. The demon lord's movements were quick and sharp. He held a curved bow in his hand. The arrow he shot didn't have any trajectory or aura. Qin Zhao could only determine the arrow's trajectory based on the direction the demon lord pulled the bow. However, when Qin Zhao dodged again, he found himself hit by another arrow. Troublesome, really, really troublesome. None of the 8 demon lords were easy to deal with. Moreover, the 8 demon lords had teamed up. This made Qin Zhao suffer even more. He couldn't continue like this. He had to end the battle quickly or think of a way to escape. Now, the 8 demon lords didn't continue chasing. Instead, they repositioned themselves. They clearly planned to slowly exhaust Qin Zhao to death. This was a very good tactic. This could prevent Qin Zhao from fighting them to the death. Right now, Qin Zhao also needed to regroup. The enemy's temporary retreat gave him a chance to catch his breath. Suddenly, Qin Zhao realized that there were still remnants of the demon lord's power in the air. The owners of this power were all the demon lords that Qin Zhao had killed earlier. They hadn't completely dispersed. Instead, they lingered nearby. Qin Zhao realized that his small world could absorb this power much more easily than before. Glancing at the 8 demon lords, Qin Zhao absorbed the power without batting an eyelid. After a short period of recuperation, the 8 greater demon overlords attacked once more. However, this time, Qin Zhao wasn't in a hurry to succeed. Instead, he focused all his attention on dodging their attacks. The saying that a prolonged defense would lead to a loss was also useful for Qin Zhao. Before long, Qin Zhao was hit consecutively. However, Qin Zhao didn't fight back because of this. Instead, he patiently stalled for time. These attacks weren't weak, but they weren't fatal. Qin Zhao needed time to absorb the remaining power of the demon lords in the air. His small world was growing silently. The 8 demon lords didn't notice anything different. They were still working together to attack Qin Zhao. 9 Heaven's Divine Emperor. Chapter 2603. Right now, Qin Zhao looked like a cornered beast. Qin Zhao could dodge one attack from the 8 demon lords, but he couldn't dodge the other one. Plus, he'd used the life force he'd used to put himself on the brink of death with Meteor. In this battle, he'd used at least 1/10 of his total life force. One had to admit that the 8 demon lords' strategy was very effective. They didn't need to use much energy at all. They could just trap Qin Zhao here until he died. The process was slightly longer, but they had time. At the moment, Qin Zhao was even calmer than them. The enormous power was evaporating in the air. Qin Zhao couldn't stop it. However, he needed to use time to absorb it. The power was the best nutrient. He didn't even have to break it down. Qin Zhao could let the small world absorb the power faster and more easily. Then, it would turn into nutrients for the small world. Finally, all the power dissipating in the air was absorbed by Qin Zhao. Qin Zhao felt that his small world had tripled from its current foundation. What did tripling mean? It was about 30 times stronger than his original state. The diameter of the small world had reached 1,500 meters. It was time to counterattack. In an instant, Qin Zhao condensed tens of thousands of black balls in the small world. All of the greater demon lords were stunned. The next moment, tens of thousands of black balls shot toward the 8 demon lords from all directions. After all, not every greater demon overlord had powerful defenses. The tens of thousands of black balls were terrifyingly destructive. Qin Zhao even felt that the small world's power surpassed his own. Moreover, Qin Zhao's attacks were limited. However, the small world's attacks were freer and more convenient. The 8 demon lords hurriedly put up their magic shields or dodged Qin Zhao's attacks. Although the number of black balls was shocking, their individual attacks were still limited. They were all targeting the demon lords. So, the effect was still limited. It could hurt some of them. But it would only hurt them. It couldn't even hurt them heavily. However, the greatest use of this move wasn't to injure or kill the demon lords. If they were really so easy to kill, then Qin Zhao wouldn't have been in such a sorry state earlier. Qin Zhao's goal was only to stop their attacks and disrupt their formation. A white dwarf 10,000 times bigger than a normal black ball condensed around Qin Zhao. 2, 3, a total of 8 white dwarfs. With a wave of his hand, 8 white dwarfs shot toward the 8 demon lords. What followed was a terrifying explosion. At the same time, Qin Zhao also moved. He turned into a beam of white light and went straight for Shane Kazlak. Shane Kazlak had just used his flaming greatsword to cut open the white dwarf. The impact of the white dwarf also covered Shane Kazlak in an instant. The terrifying impact almost tore Shane Kazlak's skin apart. The next moment, Qin Zhao appeared before Shane Kazlak. Qin Zhao was too fast, so fast that Shane Kazlak couldn't defend in time. Qin Zhao grabbed Shane Kazlak's flaming sword. Clang! Qin Zhao broke the flaming sword. Qin Zhao raised the broken blade of the flaming greatsword and slashed at Shane Kazlak. Crash! Before the blade could touch Shane Kazlak, his body suddenly turned into magma. Huge waves surged toward Qin Zhao. By then, the other demon lords had already dealt with their own problems and all reached out to help. Qin Zhao could only retreat for now, sighing inwardly. As expected, none of the demon lords were easy to deal with. It was almost impossible to catch them off guard and kill any one of them in the shortest amount of time. Just then, Qin Zhao suddenly remembered that his dark magma had merged with magma before. He wondered if Shane Kazlak's magma could absorb it. The thought only flashed through his mind before Qin Zhao made a decision. In an instant, the dark magma directly covered the magma that Shane Kazlak had transformed into. 3 arrows shot toward him from behind. Qin Zhao didn't even look back, allowing them to hit him. Damn it, what is this? Shane Kazlak panicked. Shane Kazlak could feel his body dissolving bit by bit. He felt as if someone had stuffed him into a stomach bag. Actually, his feeling wasn't wrong. Qin Zhao had a lot of experience in devouring enemies. Especially after his bloodline had completely merged, the dark magma also had the abilities of a glutton. In the past, the dark magma had devoured a lot of dark and depraved powers, so it was mostly black. But now, the dark magma started turning from speckles of red to a large area of red. Originally, it was mainly of the dark element, but after devouring Shane Kazlak, it started turning into the fire element. Qin Zhao directly put the dark magma back into his body. What flowed under his skin had turned into magma. Qin Zhao also realized that this new power in his body was especially compatible with the Nirvana flames. Absolute freeze! While Qin Zhao was still standing, Colin gave Qin Zhao an absolute freeze from behind. But this time, although Qin Zhao was frozen, he wasn't frozen like the first time. Qin Zhao moved his limbs and casually shattered the absolute freeze with a punch. Colin's expression changed because he felt the scorching aura from Qin Zhao's body. It was the aura he hated the most, just like Shane Kazlak's. Just then, Qin Zhao felt danger. The archer had inadvertently set up a magic array. Qin Zhao wasn't unfamiliar with this. Seal. Without thinking, Qin Zhao turned into a stream of light. Back then, when he'd faced Leviathan Aberrantigimus, he'd almost sealed Qin Zhao as a mere lord of the demons. If it was this time, there were so many lords. Once the seal was activated, Qin Zhao wouldn't have any chance to turn the tables. So, Qin Zhao definitely wouldn't give them the chance. Stop him! Hurry! Don't let him leave my magic array! The bow-wielding Great Lord bellowed. The strength-type demon lord stood in front of Qin Zhao. Don't even think about going anywhere. The strength-type demon lord roared, lowering his fists. But this time, Qin Zhao didn't choose to fight head-on. Instead, he took out the black trident the moment the strength-type demon lord came into contact with him. The strength-type demon lord raised his fist and smashed it at Qin Zhao. He clearly didn't realize that danger was approaching. Qin Zhao directly stabbed the black trident into the body of the strength-type demon lord. The demon lord's eyes widened and he stared at the black trident in his chest in shock. Before he could react, Qin Zhao had already punched and crushed his head. He grabbed the body of the strength-type demon lord and stuffed it into his spatial ring. The remaining 6 demon lords were all enraged. Chapter 2604. They didn't understand how Qin had done it. He had killed a greater demon lord in an instant. But this made them feel a strong sense of danger. Qin didn't plan to stay any longer, even though he had devoured Shane Kazlak through the dark lava. Moreover, Shifeng had caught the demon lord off guard and killed the demon lord. But there were still 6 greater demon lords here. Every one of them was terrifyingly powerful. He could kill 2 in a row, but that didn't mean he still had a chance. Plus, if he continued to stay, he might not even be able to kill a single one. Instead, he would be killed. If it was a one-on-one, Qin was confident that he could kill any one of them. But they wouldn't give him such a chance. Even with the black trident, it would be difficult for Qin to have the same opportunity. The black trident would make them wary. But at the same time, it would make them greedy. Qin wouldn't give them such a chance. Qin glanced at his surroundings. The small world swept up the heavily injured and the corpses of the greater demon lords and ran away without any warning. The remaining 6 greater demon overlords looked at each other in confusion. None of them chased after Qin. After thinking for a while, they realized that it wasn't Qin who had killed the greater demon lord in an instant. It was the black trident in Qin's hand. That thing was indeed a supreme treasure. But it would probably be a death sentence. Plus, Qin wasn't a kind person. He would wait for them to kill him. This was an enemy even more ferocious than they were. None of them had the confidence to kill Qin. Plus, they didn't trust each other enough. Actually, if they had been willing to give up everything and cooperate with Qin, Qin wouldn't have been able to escape now. It was because they were wary and suspicious of each other. That was why Qin had the chance to counterattack and even break through their alliance. Qin didn't swagger away. Instead, he hid his aura and headed toward Obsidian City. This place was very far from Obsidian City. Along the way, Qin first killed the few dying demons and stored their corpses in his spatial ring. Otherwise, it wouldn't be convenient. After flying for a full 4 hours, Qin finally approached Obsidian City. Just then, he saw a huge figure appear in the distance. Qin immediately returned from his energy form to his physical form. Iris. Qin, it's you? Iris thought that it was an enemy. She could only sense a terrifying aura approaching, but she was unable to identify the other party. Now, she and Beelzebub Sophie were already frightened by the mere twang of a bow. Although they had just won a match not too long ago. They occupied the territories of the 3-headed devil and the red eagle, as well as a large amount of resources. But this also caused the wrath of their enemy, King Alpha. Although the 2 of them were considered to be at the peak of the greater demon overlords, they were still inferior to the demon overlords. But it was impossible to resist the Alpha Demon King. The 30-plus greater demon overlords under him could easily slaughter them. Iris, let me rest in the castle for a while, Qin said. Although he was in a good state now, the previous high-intensity battle still made his mind tense, and his body was not very comfortable. Iris nodded. Get on my back. Iris brought Qin into Obsidian Castle. Who summoned you? You seem to have just been through a battle. Where's Sophie? Some unfamiliar demons are approaching the border of our territory, Iris said. Sophie went to check the situation. She was the only one guarding Obsidian Castle now. This was why she was so nervous earlier. What's wrong with you? Qin took out his spoils of war, the corpses of greater demon overlords. Big ones, small ones, all of different shapes. Iris was shocked and took 2 steps back. Her eyes were filled with horror. This is I came to hell to find a greater demon overlord to solve some personal problems, but I accidentally barged into their gathering. After a fight, I killed a few and escaped. This is Shane Kazlak's Balrog's sword? This is the helmet of the dead. It's from the Nether Tower. This is Morgate's head. You! How many greater demon overlords did you kill? I don't know the exact number, but my victory was very unexpected. In fact, they gathered together and didn't stop me from releasing my ultimate skill. That's why I succeeded. Chen was very sure that if they had stopped him from releasing his ultimate skill, the best outcome would have been for Chen to run away with his tail between his legs. This is... Suddenly, Iris picked up a red token. Her expression changed drastically again. This is Demon King Alpha's Crimson Token? Iris thought that she had already seen a lot of things. But at this moment, she really felt a chill. It could be said that she had watched Chen grow up step by step. She had never thought that one day, Chen would grow to where he was today. Perhaps Chen wasn't powerful enough for her to look up to. But Chen's results were definitely enough to shock her. What's this thing for? Wait, I'll tell Sophie to come back, Iris said solemnly. When Sophie discovered the signal sent by Iris, he thought that there was an enemy invasion in his territory. After all, he and Iris had agreed to use the signal only if there was a catastrophic problem in his territory. However, when Sophie returned, he found that Obsidian City was peaceful. There didn't seem to be any signs of war. Moreover, Iris's aura didn't seem to be in any danger. Beelzebub Sophie returned to Obsidian Castle. He immediately noticed that Chen was beside Iris. Chen, why are you here? Sophie, take a look at this. Iris handed the crimson token to Beelzebub Sophie. In an instant, Beelzebub Sophie's eyes were filled with shock and doubt. What the hell is going on? My spoils of war, one of them. I want to know what exactly happened. The more details, the better. Jen told Iris and Beelzebub Sophie everything that had happened. Apart from hiding the identity of the handsome guy who had summoned him and some details of the battle, he didn't hide anything else. However, after Beelzebub Sophie and Iris heard Chen's statement, their expressions froze. You're saying that you killed nearly 30 greater demon lords? Actually, there were only 2 who were truly killed. Chapter 2605. Chen Zhao was confident, but he wasn't arrogant yet. Although Shifeng had killed nearly 30 greater demon overlords, the demon overlords were still far stronger than the demon overlords. But in reality, he'd only killed 2 in a head-on battle. Meteorite was his trump card, but it wasn't his true combat power. Moreover, the requirements to use meteorite were too strict. Beelzebub Sophie played with the red token. Even though he was just listening to Qin Zhao's description. Both the husband and wife were shaken to the core. It was hard to imagine that he'd fought 8 demon lords. Not only that, but he also killed 2 of them and escaped safely with the spoils of war. How difficult would it be? I have use for this red token, Sophie said. I'll use the wealth of almost 30 demon lords to exchange for it. Wait. Are you mistaken? I killed those greater demon overlords, and you're using their wealth to exchange for my spoils of war? You killed them, but how are you going to get their wealth? You can't even find their territory, let alone their wealth. Their wealth won't automatically become yours just because you killed their master, but I can. What's this red token for? Chen Zhao asked. Using the wealth of 30 demon lords to exchange for this red token. This could only mean that the value of this crimson token was much higher than the wealth of 30 greater demon overlords. So, Qin Zhao was very curious about the value of this token. This is the token of the secondary demon king I'm going to deal with. It also contains his power. As long as I have this token, his subordinates won't be able to attack me unless I attack them first. And the secondary demon king isn't allowed to attack you directly, so you'll be undefeatable, right? Qin Zhao immediately understood Sophie's intentions. Not only that, I can also study that secondary demon king's power. I could even absorb it and find a better way to counter him. Sophie had to admit that Qin Zhao had given him too many surprises. How difficult would it be to defeat and replace a secondary demon king? That was almost impossible to succeed. Perhaps Sophie's subconscious thought was that he couldn't succeed. He thought that he couldn't succeed. Ambition had driven him to this step, but it didn't mean that he believed he could do it. He was not the first demon lord to attempt to replace the lesser demon king. However, in the past tens of thousands of years, only one greater demon overlord had successfully become a lesser demon king. Beelzebub Sophie even felt that he was just one of the many losers who kept failing. He had even made up his mind. But Qin Zhao had given him hope of turning the tables. Before he could face the lesser demon king, there was still an insurmountable mountain. They were the 30 or so greater demon overlords under the lesser demon king. As long as these 30+ greater demon overlords existed, the demon overlords would not be able to escape. Then he would never be able to face the lesser demon king. It seemed that the situation he was facing was despair. There was no way he could fight against the alliance of more than 30 greater demon lords. Unless these 30+ greater demon overlords were willing to send them off one by one. Was that even possible? Impossible, no one was a fool. However, Qin Zhao's appearance this time had directly destroyed the alliance of more than 30 demon lords under the secondary demon king's command. Moreover, he even brought him a crimson token. This red token turned Beelzebub Sophie from a passive situation to an active one. Due to the restrictions of the rules, the lesser demon king could not directly attack Beelzebub Sophie. Moreover, because of Qin Zhao's massacre, only a single digit remained of the 30 greater demon lords. This greatly weakened the lesser demon king's power. The level of a lesser demon king's power was related to the number of greater demon lords under him. Moreover, the remaining greater demon lords could not directly attack Beelzebub Sophie with the crimson token. This meant that as long as Beelzebub Sophie was willing, he could choose to attack at any time. Of course, the crimson token could only maintain a situation where he would not be defeated. It was not a hope of victory. He had to face a lesser demon king. A crimson token was far from being able to change the outcome. Of course, even so, it was still enough to make Beelzebub Sophie excited. Oh, your alchemist subordinate already has results. I was going to summon you a few days ago, but you came yourself. Take me to see his results. Felt Nightake knew about Qin Zhao's arrival. At the entrance of his alchemy lab, he waited respectfully for Qin Zhao's arrival. When he saw Qin Zhao, he walked quickly and knelt on one knee to welcome Qin Zhao. Great Master, thank you for coming. If a normal person spoke to Qin Zhao like this and knelt on one knee, Qin Zhao would only think that there was something wrong with this person. However, this was hell and Felt Nightake was a demon. Everything was as it should be. I heard that you've already made the magic potion I needed? Yes. I've completed the divine power potion. Please forgive me for naming it on my own. Divine power potion? Does it really have such an effect? Please follow me. Felt Nightake brought Qin Zhao into the lab. There was a crystal container with a diameter of 2 meters and a height of 3 meters. The crystal container was filled with colorful liquid, like melted glass slowly flowing in the container. The colors were so bright that Qin Zhao was dazzled. Don't tell me this is the divine power potion you were talking about. Yes, Master. This is the divine power potion. How do I drink it? How much does it work? Master, it's actually not for drinking, Felt Nightake said. It's for soaking. Soak your body in the divine power potion and let the power contained in the potion seep into your body, said Felt Nightake. How much can it increase my power? Master, this divine power potion can't increase your power. Are you kidding me? Master, the divine power potion's true function is to improve your power, starting from the most basic power to the most advanced strengthening spell you've mastered. If you can use all your power perfectly, this divine power potion will be useless to you. If there's even the slightest flaw in your power magic system, the divine power potion will help you understand and perfect it. Divine King of the Nine Heavens. Chapter 2606 Just soak it. You just need to soak it. Of course, you can also drink it, but it doesn't taste very good. Moreover, it can be used repeatedly after a certain period of time. If you drink it, it can only be used once. Can I take it away directly? Chen Zhao asked. Of course. In fact, Fate Nitak had created this container for the sake of beauty and convenience. Other than making the divine power potion, Chen Zhao had to be perfect in other aspects. After taking the divine power potion, Chen Zhao bid farewell to Beelzebub, Sophie, and Iris. His time in hell had come to an end. Chen Zhao also brought some local specialties from hell back. When he returned to the human world, Chen Zhao received a call from Alex. Chen, where have you been these past 2 days? You weren't in the service area when I called you. I called Fei Lai and she said you had something urgent, but she didn't tell me where you went. I thought you were kidnapped. Before going to hell, Chen Zhao had only told Fei Lai. Chen Zhao was about to explain when Alex interrupted him. But Alex interrupted him again. Forget it. But even if you're kidnapped, please let the kidnappers go or deal with it yourself. I have too many things on my hands right now. I don't have time to deal with such a small matter. Chen Zhao nodded. Is it a small matter to you that I was kidnapped? Everyone's time is precious. Are you willing to spend it on kidnappers? Or use it to make money? Fine. Compared to money, kidnapping is indeed a small matter. Chen Zhao shrugged. Why are you looking for me? It's about the contract between you and Ms. Jane Fankel. We've mostly settled it. Now we just need your signature. What time? It's best if it's now. Now? Don't you want to reschedule? I've already said that my time is precious. Your time is precious as well. Her time is just as precious. Fine. Now give me the address. Drive a good car to pick me up. I'll go with you. Oh, you have to change. Chen Zhao returned home. After changing, he drove a luxury car. Chen Zhao didn't really like driving his new Rolls-Royce Phantom. However, this car was indeed very suitable for decoration. Compared to a flashy supercar, a sedan was more suitable for a formal occasion. He'd gotten the latest Rolls-Royce Phantom not long ago. It was a gift from Amira. When Chen Zhao arrived at Alex's law firm, she even found one of her subordinates to be their driver for the time being. In Alex's words, people of their status needed a full-time chauffeur. Especially in formal occasions, the status of those who drove themselves would drop by a notch. This had nothing to do with wealth, but a matter of style. Chen Zhao didn't mind, but he still respected Alex's suggestion. Sitting in the back seat, Alex handed him a document. This is Madame Jane Fankel's message. Take a look. Is she only 45? Chen Zhao asked, confused. He had thought that Lady Jane Urunkel would be a little older than him. Yes, is there a problem? Didn't you say that when she was in the 90s, she launched the biggest merger of the last century? At that time, she was not even 20 years old, right? To be precise, she's 19. Chen Zhao gasped. 19? What was he still doing? Spending all night in internet cafes with his roommates. She was already a force to be reckoned with in the financial market. She was the youngest recipient of a master's degree from Yale University's Department of Finance. At the age of 16, she began to get involved in the family business. At the age of 18, she officially took over the Caribbean Empire Cruise Line. At the age of 19, she reached the most glorious moment of her career. Although nothing similar happened in the following 20 years, the Caribbean Empire Cruise Line successfully became the world's #1 cruise line in her hands. The car drove into a luxurious manor. Along the way, there were many well-equipped men in black. This doesn't look like a rich manor. It looks more like a mafia family's nest, right? Alex seemed to know what Chen Zhao was going to say. What's her background? The Marx family, from Italy. Almost all the information about her that's circulated around the world has concealed her surname. Her full name should be Jane Fankel Marx. After the car stopped, a man in black walked up to open the door for Chen Zhao. Are you sure that Madame Jane Urunkel won't resort to other means to sign an unfair contract with us? It's an era where capital rules. If she still does business the way her family did in the past, she wouldn't have been able to develop Caribbean Empire Cruise Line to its current scale. Alex had interacted with all kinds of people, so she knew this very well. Every industry had its own rules. It seemed like the mafia was very scary. However, if they tried to clear their names, they would follow the rules more than others once they chose to enter a certain industry. Because they needed to clear their names, they couldn't use the same methods as before. This was their choice. Qin Zhao finally met Jane Fankel. Perhaps it was because of her meticulous makeup and matching of her clothes. Jane Fankel looked younger than in her photos. Hello, Mr. Qin. Jane Fankel extended her hand with a smile. Hello, Ms. Fankel. Welcome. Please come in. The two entered the living room with Jane Fankel's invitation. It looked like a scene from The Godfather that Qin Zhao had seen before. It had a very European style of decoration and solid wood furniture. After the two sat down, Alex spoke. Ms. Fankel, shall we go straight to the topic? Of course, Mr. Qin. Is that okay? Jane Fankel nodded, but then she looked at Qin Zhao. Meeting Jane Fankel's gaze, Qin Zhao said, My history is more like winning the lottery. I don't know anything about finance, so I leave most of my business to professionals. Alex is one of the most professional people. Of course, we all know how smart and capable Alex is, but this also has to do with Mr. Chen's trust. You flatter me, Qin Zhao said, smiling. Jane Fankel waved her finger behind her. One of her subordinates passed a bound document to Qin Zhao. Qin Zhao, on the other hand, pushed it in front of Alex. Divine King of the Nine Heavens. Chapter 2607. It wasn't Alex's first time reading a contract. However, she still read it very seriously. However, after looking at it for a moment, Alex frowned. Ms. Fankel, did you take the wrong contract? Stunned, Jane Fankel asked. What's wrong? This contract is different from what we agreed on. It's also not the source document I saw the other day. Jane Fankel furrowed her brows. Help me point out what's different. Take a look. Here, and these 3 places. If my boss signs this contract, then my boss won't be selling the shares to you. He'll be giving you the shares and paying you $2 billion. Alex's expression was also very ugly. After all, she just promised that the other party wouldn't be so unruly. In the blink of an eye, she'd encountered such an unruly situation. After Jane Fankel made sure the contract wasn't the same as the one she had read before, her face turned pale. I'm very sorry, Mr. Qin, Ms. Alex. This is due to my negligence. I took the wrong contract. I'll give the original contract to Mr. Chen as soon as possible. At the same time, we'll increase the price by 5%. What do you think, Mr. Chen? Qin Zhao looked at Alex to see what her plan was. All right then, but I hope there won't be such a mistake next time. Qin Zhao and Alex stood up and prepared to leave. But just then, the black-clothed man at the door crossed his arms and blocked Alex and Qin Zhao's way. Qin Zhao turned around and looked at Jane Fankel. Ms. Fankel, can you explain what this means? Jane Fankel's shocked face was also tinged with anger. AMU Tansk, what are you doing? Just then AMU, who had slicked back hair, said, Miss, we're now under Mr. Caesar's orders. Sorry. Caesar? You're under him? What can he give you? Jane Fankel was both shocked and furious. Caesar? Her useless brother? If he was even a little bit capable, he wouldn't have made her his heir. Mr. Max agreed yesterday that Mr. Caesar will be his successor, and at the same time, he will hand over all power to Mr. Caesar. In other words, from then on, all of us will automatically be loyal to Mr. Caesar. Impossible. How could father make such a decision? Jan Fankel's face was filled with disbelief. By now, Chen Zhao was getting impatient. He looked at Jane Fankel. I don't care about your family ethics. We just want to get out of here. I'm sorry, Mr. Qin. First, you need to sign this contract before you can leave. The lawyer who had been standing behind Jane Fankel suddenly spoke. What if I don't? Chen Zhao asked calmly. Then I'm afraid you won't be able to leave here today. Just then, Amu and Tansk pointed their guns at the back of Chen Zhao's head. Chen Zhao glanced at Alex from the corner of his eye. She nodded secretly. The two of them seemed to be communicating something. What? Chen Zhao sneered. Pointing a gun at your partner's head is how you cooperate? Jane Fankel was trembling with rage. She had been in the industry for almost 30 years. She had never been humiliated like this before. But this time, she didn't even have a chance to retort. She wasn't angry at Chen Zhao's accusations and humiliation. She was angry at her own brother for doing such a despicable thing. If today's incident got out, then she and the business empire that she had built would be destroyed in a day. The bigger a company was, the more they cared about their reputation. Pointing a gun at someone's head and forcing them to sign a contract? This was unforgivable at any time. What would the regular tourists think? What would the shareholders of the company think? Chandler! Did you change the contract too? Boss, I'm sorry, Chandler said calmly. Mr. Max also arranged for me to stay with you. Chen Zhao looked at Alex. Is that enough? Yes. Alex took out a portable recorder. That's enough to prove that you were acting in self-defense. Amu and Tansk suddenly realized that Chen Zhao had disappeared before them. The next moment, Amu felt a heavy kick on his back. Then he flew into the air. He didn't die, but Chen Zhao had broken his spine. Lying on the ground, his body was twisted. His upper body kept struggling, but his lower body didn't move at all. Startled, Tansk suddenly raised his gun and turned. But before he could aim at Chen Zhao had already broken Tansk's wrist with one hand. Then he pointed the gun at Tansk's shoulder. Bang, bang, bang. Alex closed her eyes and turned around. Please don't make it too bloody. The suit I'm wearing costs $30,000. Chen Zhao didn't make it too bloody. He didn't even kill anyone. After all, his suit was expensive too. It was inconvenient to move around in a suit. Casual clothes were more comfortable. Ms. Fankel, you've ruined my rare chance to wear a suit. At this moment, the men in black who were scattered around the manor ran over after hearing the gunshots. Jane Fankel walked to the door with a furious expression. Put away your guns. Mr. Chen, I'll give you an explanation. Jane Fankel didn't have the face to talk about cooperation anymore. If she couldn't give Chen Zhao a satisfactory answer, their family's huge business empire would also sink into oblivion. Jane Fankel stood at the door and looked at the men in black who hadn't put down their guns. You better know what you're doing. If you put down your guns now, I'll pretend this never happened. But if you reject my good intentions, you better think about your wives and children. Jane Fankel was born in a mafia family. Her father was a godfather. She'd been influenced by some things since she was young. She wasn't a white lotus. She'd seen more bloodshed than even a soldier who'd been to the battlefield. What my father and brother can give you, I can also give you, and more. Jane Fankel had controlled the Caribbean Empire cruise line for more than 20 years. She was not someone who could be dismissed just because of the title of godfather. If she wanted to, she could directly starve her family. This wasn't a joke. And this time, she wasn't joking either. She was really angry. Chapter 2608. The men in black lowered their guns one after another. Once there was a first, there would be a second. Even these people would follow blindly. Some of them were Jane Fankel's trusted followers. Thus, they were the first to lower their guns. Mr. Chen, please give me 3 days. Sure. If you can give me a satisfactory answer in 3 days, we'll continue working together. Then, Chen Zhao and Alex drove away. In the car, Chen Zhao asked, Alex, do you think she directed it herself? Alex shook her head. She wouldn't gamble with her company's reputation. After a pause, Alex added, I thought you'd kill someone. I've always been a pacifist. Alex glanced at Chen Zhao in disdain. After returning home, Portia stayed at home to take care of the kids. However, Qin Zhao realized that his long-absent assistant, Zephyra, was also there. "Zephyra, you're back? When did you come back?" "Boss." Zephyra greeted Qin Zhao with a smile. "Zephyra, did you go on a mission in the past few days?" Portia was very curious about Zephyra's deeds. "You definitely don't want to know the whole process." Zephyra still had a faint smile on her face. "Did you kill someone?" Zephyra hesitated. She glanced at Qin Zhao silently, and then nodded. "Wow! Impressive." Portia's passion had been ignited. After all, she had a normal life and desired to live a life beyond that. Her mind automatically filled in the gaps of Zephyra's passionate life. No matter what kind of bloody storm Zephyra was facing outside, he did not care. Here, Zephyra was just an ordinary girl. Hardworking and approachable. After lunch, Zephyra sat by the lake and dipped her bare feet into the water. Unlike the turbulent life outside, the life here made her feel peaceful and tranquil. Qin Zhao brought a glass of juice to Zephyra. "Is it resolved?" Zephyra hesitated for a moment, and then shook her head. "What's the situation this time?" "An extremely ferocious demonic dragon has massacred more than 10 human villages. He's extremely cunning. There's no pattern to the targets he chooses. He chooses them completely randomly, and they're very far away from each other. After he finishes massacring a village, he immediately leaves. My team members and I have been hunting him for a few months, and we've only encountered him once. Even if he has absolute strength, he won't come into direct contact with us. His footprints are all over the 5 continents. His actions should have angered the entire spirit world, right? This situation is no longer a dragon slayer's task. Are you willing to help?" "I really want to, but he didn't enter my territory," Qin Zhao said. "In the spirit world, those who have the strength to do so all have the same thoughts as you. Only a few hot-headed spiritualists fantasized about the great cause of slaying dragons and gathered together to fight against the demonic dragon. They heavily injured the demonic dragon, while their entire army was annihilated. We, the dragon slayers, weren't able to make it in time for that battle." Qin Zhao could hear the complaint in Refra's voice. It seemed to be very dissatisfied with a master like Qin Zhao. He clearly had the ability to solve the problem, but he just stood by. "Forget it. This is the last time I think that I've already quit the dragon slayers. If it's your request, I can help you once," Qin Zhao said. Refra lowered her head and thought for a long time. "Are you really willing to help?" "Yes. Please help me destroy that demonic dragon." "Sure. Tell me the demonic dragon's whereabouts. I'll pay close attention to it. As soon as I get accurate information, I'll tell you immediately." "Okay. Also, can you bring me with you? I want to kill that demonic dragon with my own hands." "Other than hatred and honor, is there any other reason?" "For us dragon slayers, there are some things that we can never erase, such as the dragon slayer mark." Refra lifted a dragon tattoo on her arm. It exuded the aura of the dragon race. It was very faint, but it was real. Every dragon slayer is actually a descendant of the dragon race. It's just that it's almost impossible for us to activate the dragon race's bloodline. However, we can temporarily borrow the power of the dragon race by bathing in dragon blood. Zephyra rolled down her sleeves. "If the conditions allow, I can agree to it." Refra had quit the Dragon Slayer organization, but it wasn't difficult for her to obtain information about the Dragon Slayers. After all, a lot of information was shared among the Dragon Slayers. Even though she had left the Dragon Slayer organization, she could still obtain the corresponding information through her former companions. "But I don't believe there's such a crazy dragon," Qin Zhao said. "From his actions, he's an extremely calm dragon. He doesn't only know how to kill. Killing for the sake of killing isn't in line with human nature. Human nature didn't just refer to a person's personality. It was the nature of all intelligent races. If the other was a violent dragon who didn't know how to think, he might only kill to satisfy his desires. But he was a dragon who could escape from the dragon slayers and the entire spiritual world many times. He didn't seem like an idiot who did things recklessly. I think he definitely has his own goal, but he hasn't revealed it yet. We've suspected that he has other goals, but we haven't found out yet. Qin Zhao rubbed his chin and thought for a long time. His purpose in doing this is completely like the action of a lunatic. However, he is not a lunatic. His seemingly clueless actions might be because he has put his purpose out in the open, but it has been ignored by everyone. Zephyr frowned. On the surface. You mean, his goal is to provoke the entire spiritual world? That's the only possibility I can think of. What's in it for him? Does he want to die? Maybe. I'm not a smart person either. These are just my guesses. Qin Zhao had limited information, so his guesses were also very limited. But he still believed that this wasn't an irrational killing. Qin Zhao still had the perspective of profit. The smarter a person was, the less they would do irrational things. If the other party was a giant dragon above the Dragon Clan, then he would definitely choose a more reliable method. If they wanted to overthrow the rule of the humans, it was far from enough to just rely on killing. At least, normal killing couldn't overthrow the rule of humans. Chapter 2609. The Marx family originated from Sicily. They immigrated to the United States in the 1920s. Then, they took root here and made their first fortune by relying on the bloody accumulation of primitive blood. Prohibition in the United States gave them a chance to rise. In fact, most of the reason why the American mafia was rampant today was because of the prohibition. Most of the mafia relied on Z's private alcoholic beverages to rise to power. In the era of prohibition, it was also the era when the mafia was at its most rampant. How rampant were they? They shot the judge in front of the court in broad daylight. The gunman was not punished. Instead, he sent a letter to the judge. He regarded it as a glorious achievement. If the current American politics was controlled by the capitalists, then the American political system was dominated by capitalists. In the past, the American politics was controlled by the mafia. Although the United States had cleaned up the chaos several times. Even today, the mafia problem in the United States had not been solved. Because the mafia was deeply rooted in society. Of course, in the 1960s and 1970s, there were a group of clear-headed families. There were also a group of clear-headed families who knew that this path could not be walked to the end. These families worked hard to clean up their families. That was the case with the Marx family. It was under this situation that Jane Frankel's father took over the family. But he was limited by the vision and reputation of the previous generation. So, Jane Frankel's father did not achieve much. But he had laid a very good foundation for Jane Funkel. Jane Frankel was the representative of the mafia descendants in the new era. Father, I want to know why. I've already brought the family out of the swamp, but your decision has plunged the family back into the swamp. If you can't give me a satisfactory answer, I might very well correct your mistake myself. Jane Frankel tried her best to speak calmly and slowly. But her suppressed anger and confusion could still be heard in her voice. Old Marx was silent for a while on the other end of the phone. Then, he said in a deep voice, I am just correcting the mistakes of the past. Mistakes? What mistakes? We are the mafia. We are born to walk in the dark, not fantasize about how to dance in the sun. Jan Frankel couldn't believe that her father would say such a thing. Back then, he stood his ground and led the family to give up those shameful businesses. Old Marx was dedicated to cleaning up the family's reputation. Why would he say such a thing? Do you know what you are talking about? Jan Frankel's face turned gloomy. Of course I know what I'm talking about, but what about you? Do you know who you're talking to? Or do you think you can talk to your father like this just because you've made some achievements? All right, I'm sorry, Father. I was wrong. Jane Frankel's tone grew colder and colder. In the next instant, her tone changed and she suddenly said, This should be the last time I call you father. You want to sever ties with me? Who gave you the courage to make such a stupid decision? I don't want to sever ties with you, I want to sever ties with my family. Now I want you to apologize immediately. Sorry, Mr. Marks, I refuse your request. Fankel, you've made a stupid decision. Old Max's tone turned cold. No, you made a stupid decision. Looks like I need to let you know how stupid your decision is, Old Max said coldly. Looks like we have a big disagreement. Then, our communication ends here. Jan Fankel hung up the phone and turned to a tall man with paint on his face. Ayer, I'll leave the rest to you. They were now outside the headquarters of the Marx family. Behind Jan Fankel and Ayer was a group of fully armed mercenaries. Jan Fankel had spent a lot of money to hire them. Jan Fankel handed Ayer 2 photos. These 2, I want you to ensure their safety. The 2 people in the photos were her father, Old Max, and her younger brother, Caesar Max. She planned to use her power to destroy the Marx family. She would play the role of the family gravedigger. At the same time, she would use her power to teach her father and her brother a lesson. What was the power of capital? In the face of the power of capital, all the glory and prestige of the family in the past would become worthless. There were about 100 people in this mercenary legion, and they were not just individually strong. They also had the most advanced weapons. Each of them was equipped with enough equipment to shoot at 30 enemies for 30 minutes. Ayer took the photos and glanced at them, revealing his white teeth. I'll try my best, but I can't guarantee anything. There would always be some employer who would make a request before the war. However, Ayer would ignore most of the requests. Their mission was not to save people, but to kill. They were enemies. Before he could ensure that they put down their weapons, he would not agree to Jan Fankel's request. The mercenaries easily tore through the Marx family's defensive line. The people inside the Marx family could not even communicate with the outside world by phone. The mercenaries had already turned the place into a restricted area with interference devices. Jan Fankel looked at the once familiar home, which was now engulfed in the flames of war. She did not plan to kill her father and brother. She just wanted them to not be a hindrance. However, given her father and brother's way of doing things, they would never allow her to leave the family's control. That was why Jan Fankel chose to make the first move. Before the 2 of them could even react, he had uprooted them and the Marx family. Jan Fankel was from the Marx family. That was why she knew the Marx family better than anyone else. Meanwhile, in the Marx family, Caesar and old Marx were standing in front of a window on the 3rd floor. Both of them looked at the chaos below expressionlessly. They watched as their family's gunmen retreated step by step. Neither of them was worried or afraid. Caesar glanced at his father and said, "It seems that Jan Fankel does not know her family well enough. This is a chance for her to understand that compared to the entire family, her achievements are nothing at all," Ezechiel said with a smile. At this time, a voice came from behind them. "I can give her a chance, but that depends on her performance." Chapter 26:10. How's the situation inside? Jan Fankel asked. It's going well. Although we encountered quite a bit of resistance, Ayer said disapprovingly. Although they were facing a well-known mafia family, their combat power was not on the same level. The difference in equipment was not something that could be made up for with numbers. Especially the difference in equipment. It was not something that could be made up for with numbers. In this battle, no tactics could make up for the difference in equipment between the 2 sides. One side was still using pistols while the other side was equipped with automatic machine guns. There were also several heavy machine guns mounted on the off-road vehicles. They followed their team members into the manor. This was no longer a battle. It was a one-sided massacre. Jan Fankel's heart was heavy. Leading an army to massacre her own family. If it was anyone else, they wouldn't feel happy about it. She hoped that her father could see the situation clearly. He could surrender quickly. That way, she could reduce the number of deaths she caused. However, so many of her family members had already been killed. He did not seem to want to surrender. Since when did her father become so unyielding? Or could it be that she had misjudged him? It shouldn't take long before you can go in, Ayer said. I hope so, Jane Fankel said, trying her best to calm herself down. At that moment, the mafia gunmen outside the manor had been completely cleared out. The gunshots inside the manor also died down after a few grenades exploded. Guild leader, the enemies inside the manor have basically been cleared out. Through thermal imaging, there are still 3 people inside the manor. They are all under our control. Should we execute them on the spot? Before Ayer could speak, Jane Fankel hurriedly shouted. No need. My employer and I will go in now. You just need to be on guard. Ayer looked at Jane Fankel. Let's go, Madame Fankel. With a heavy heart, Jane Fankel returned to the home she had grown up in. Ayer smiled. He had seen too many employers like her who were filled with worries. Jane Fankel was not the first, and she would not be the last. Because of some ridiculous reason, she had broken up with her family. Then, she would find them and use violence to convince them. When Jane Fankel entered the manor, she could not help but regret her decision. She looked at the corpses all over the place. She even knew the names of some of them. Now, however, she had buried them with her own hands. They might not be related by blood, but they became a family because of the same surname. Jane Fankel's feelings were getting more complicated. Some of the corpses could no longer be seen clearly. Every scene here was filled with memories for Jane Fankel. At this moment, the mercenary standing at the door cleverly ran to Ayer. Leader, there seems to be a problem. What's wrong? The people I sent into the villa have all disappeared. Disappeared? What does that mean? They've all disappeared from the thermal imaging equipment, and there's no response from their walkie-talkies. Is it signal interference? And there's even a temperature disturbance? Ayer asked with a frown. He had encountered a similar situation on the battlefield before. By lowering the temperature of the environment, the enemy was affecting the thermal imaging equipment. Lowering the ambient temperature seemed complicated. In fact, it wasn't that difficult to do. Especially in the interior of the building, as long as a portion of the ice was placed, the ambient temperature could be easily lowered to a point where even thermal imaging instruments could not detect it. Where are the enemies? There are 3 people in the villa. Their thermal imaging is very clear, and they have been in the last room on the 3rd floor. They haven't moved at all. Gather our men and follow me in, Ayer said with a sour expression. He had thought it would be a simple mission. However, the reality had exceeded his expectations. What about outside? There are no more enemies outside, so we don't need to station our men outside. Let's go in and see what kind of monsters are inside. I want to go with you. Jane Fankel looked at Ayer with a serious expression. Ms. Fankel, I don't have time to protect you. I don't need your protection. Jane Fankel was worried that the mercenaries had gone berserk. She might not care about the others, but she would not allow her father and brother to be harmed. Fine, but you better not get in the way of the battle. Soon, Ayer's men were gathered. The villa was huge, and a single living room could fit a dozen mercenaries. The group carefully entered the villa. When they reached the living room, it was empty. There was nothing, not even a body. Something isn't right, Ayer said with a frown. A few mercenaries in charge of scouting ahead gestured to Ayer. The 2nd floor is safe. We can go up. The mercenaries went up to the 2nd floor one after another. Jane Fankel walked in the middle. That way, if anything happened, she would be the first to be protected. However, when they reached the 2nd floor and were about to go up to the 3rd floor, they saw a door in front of them. Jane Fankel frowned at the strange door. The door was engraved with obscure and complicated patterns. The main part of the pattern was a giant dragon, spreading 3 waves of fear and despair to the world. Below the dragon were people kneeling on the ground, shivering. Why is there a door like this here? Jane Fankel was confused. There shouldn't be a door like this in a place like this. It wasn't some kind of art piece. Even if it was, it should be in her father's study or collection room. Ayer signaled his men and forced their way in. One of the mercenaries went up and kicked the door. With a bang, the strange door was kicked open. Then, a cloud of smoke spread out from the door. Careful, it might be poisonous gas, Eyre said, covering his nose. However, after a while, the mercenaries realized the smoke wasn't poisonous at all. At least, they didn't feel anything unusual. Let's go up and have a look. Stay alert. Al sensed that the villa was filled with a strange and indescribable pressure. He didn't like this place. If he had a choice, he would rather be on the battlefield than in this depressing villa. The mercenaries went through the door one after another. Jane Fankel hesitated for a while, but she still followed them. For some reason, there was a voice in her head that seemed to be stopping her from going through the door. Chapter 26:11. The moment Jane Fankel stepped through the door, she heard a deafening roar. Gunshots and explosions rang out one after another. Jane Fankel waved away the mist in front of her. She was so frightened that her body froze on the spot. Jane Fankel was frightened by the strange dragon with half of its body emerging from the mist. This was not home, but an unknown land shrouded in fog. Although only half of the dragon's body was exposed, it was already nearly 10 meters long and had powerful claws. Eyre and his mercenaries were currently engaged in a fierce battle with the strange dragon. However, be it guns or grenades, none of them could hurt the strange dragon. Every time the strange dragon waved its claws or spat out its dragon breath, it could kill a few mercenaries. Fankel! Explain to me, what is this? What is this? Jane Fankel couldn't care less about Eyre's questions. She stood there in a daze, unable to move her eyes. The scene in front of her, the creature in front of her, was completely beyond her understanding, beyond her worldview. What exactly is this? At that moment, a mercenary's entire body was bitten by the strange dragon. The mercenary let out a strange cry. At the same time, he pulled out his dagger and stabbed it into the strange dragon's neck and jaw. The strange dragon's skin was pierced, and in pain, it spat out a mouthful of acid. The mercenary was instantly dissolved. Eyre's expression changed. That monster seems to be able to be injured by cold weapons. Everyone had no choice but to drop the firearms in their hands. Instead, he pulled out his saber. Kill! At this moment, no one chose to retreat. It wasn't that they could ignore life and death. It was because they knew that they had no way out. If they retreated now, they would only die faster. They were the elite of the mercenaries. Elites did not necessarily represent their individual combat strength. It was because they knew when to make the right choice. Everyone threw themselves at the strange dragon without a care for their own safety. The strange dragon could melt a person with its acid breath. However, the other mercenaries had already pounced on the strange dragon. Everyone used all their strength to stab or scratch the neck of the strange dragon with their daggers. They were not warriors who faced death with equanimity. But at this moment, they could be called warriors. The strange dragon's neck was riddled with holes. However, its vitality was still as tenacious as ever. Al suddenly pounced forward, his saber raised high above his head. A 1-meter-long wound appeared on the strange dragon's neck. Fresh blood splashed all over Eyre, and the strange dragon finally collapsed. At this moment, there were only a few people left in Eyre's group. Everyone was injured, and exhaustion was written all over their faces. They had never experienced a battle like this. It was a terrifying and strange battle. However, before everyone could heave a sigh of relief. Countless strange dragon heads emerged from the fog. Everyone looked at the scene before them in despair. Some mercenaries even knelt on the ground and cried bitterly. At this moment, 3 figures gradually appeared in the fog. Jane Fankel's pupils shrank. 2 of the 3 people who appeared were her father, Old Max, and her brother Caesar. The other person stood on the left side of Old Max, but he had a malicious smile on his face. The strange dragons did not attack the 3 of them. Fankel, I bet you didn't expect us to meet like this, Old Max said with a smile. Caesar licked his lips and looked at Jane Fankel vaguely. His gaze made Jane Fankel very uncomfortable. See? This is the power of the capital you were so proud of. Old Max pointed at the despairing mercenaries. Before our family's power, your power is so insignificant, so laughable. This is not our family's power! Countless thoughts popped up in Jane Fankel's mind. This was not what she understood. How could her family have such power? You can only blame your ignorance. We are supposed to be the kings of darkness. Now is the time to regain our family's glory. With these monsters? You will only bring your family to the grave with you, Jane Fankel said with a cold smile. She calmed down instead, even though her heart was already panicking. Father, since she has betrayed her family and bloodline, let her blood be a part of mine, Caesar said coldly. Old Max did not care about his son's request. He continued to look at Jane Fankel. Fankel, my daughter, I forgive you for your disobedience. Come back to my arms. Old Max opened his arms, as if welcoming Jane Fankel's arrival. Jane Fankel did not move. She felt that there was something about Old Max that made her feel uneasy. Also, Old Max's pupils were different from what she remembered. They were vertical pupils that she could not understand. Fankel, you have failed to live up to your father's expectations. Caesar looked at Jane Fankel with an even colder gaze. There was even a hint of joy in his eyes. Old Max rubbed his nose and said helplessly, Seems like Fankel has chosen a different path. Forget it, if you don't want to accept your family, then so be it. Caesar could not help but grin as he walked towards Jane Fankel step by step. Suddenly, a figure appeared in front of Jane Fankel. Ayer was holding a submachine gun and fired at Caesar. Ah! Caesar was shot in all directions, but the bullets did not penetrate his skin. Jane Fankel looked at Caesar in disbelief. How was this possible? How could her brother ignore the attack of firearms? I will kill you all! Caesar roared. Half of his face was covered in scales. At that moment, a glass bottle was thrown into the mist and landed in front of Caesar. This? Caesar lowered his head and looked at the glass bottle. Damn it! Get away, you idiot! Old Max shouted anxiously. In the next instant, the glass bottle suddenly exploded, bursting with a dazzling white light. Jane Fankel and Ayer were also blinded by the dazzling white light. Suddenly, Jane Fankel and Ayer felt something grab the back of their necks and forcefully drag them into the mist. In the next instant, their vision turned black. It was as if they had traveled through a different world. They had returned to the other side of the door. A tall and slender woman was standing in front of them. The woman was holding a chain with both hands. The two ends of the chain were connected to hooks. It seemed like it was this pair of hooked claws that had dragged them out of the fog. Don't ask anything. If you don't want to die, we'd better leave this place first. Divine Emperor of the Nine Heavens. Chapter 26:12. After saying that, the woman turned around and walked away. Jane Fankel and Ariel hurried to catch up with the woman. They dared not ask any more questions. In short, everything that had happened just now. Even the woman before them had shown signs of abnormality. She ran a few kilometers away from the manor. Only then did the woman stop. Jane Fankel was so tired that she could not even stand up straight. She dared not stop during the whole process. Ariel was still full of energy. At the same time, he kept his guard up against the mysterious woman. They did not meet any obstacles along the way. It made him suspect the woman's identity even more. Is this enough? Jane Fankel asked worriedly. No. The woman turned around and looked at Jane Fankel. Suddenly, Jane Fankel saw the woman's pupils. She was so scared that she took a few steps back and fell on her butt. Ariel's scalp went numb. He saw it too. He saw that the woman's pupils were the same as old Max's, inhuman pupils. Ariel pulled out his knife and pointed it at the mysterious woman. Are you one of them? The mysterious woman curled her lips. One of them? Aren't you two the same? Us? We have nothing to do with those things. Even Jane Fankel could not convince herself of this. After all, two of her closest relatives had turned into those things. She was not sure whether she would turn into those things or not. Before this, she had no idea about it at all. Maybe she is, but I am not. I have nothing to do with her or her family. Ariel hated Jane Fankel very much. Even if he knew, Jane Fankel might be a victim. Still, he could not help but hate Jane Fankel. He. You received the dragon blood baptism and are still unscathed. You are telling me you are not a dragon descendant? What dragon blood baptism? What dragon descendant? I don't understand what you are talking about. If a normal person comes in contact with dragon blood, it will be like taking a bath in acid. If a drop of dragon blood is eaten by mistake, it will be like taking the deadliest poison. But you have not shown any abnormalities until now. It means that not only do you have dragon blood, but you have also awakened it. What are you talking about? I don't even know what you are talking about. Don't be in a hurry to deny it. Do you have greater endurance and stamina than ordinary people? I'm a mercenary. I've received the most professional training, so it's not strange that my endurance and stamina are better than ordinary people. When Iyer said that, he actually felt a little guilty. Because he knew his own situation. His endurance, stamina, and even his body were more like Data. Not only were they slightly stronger than ordinary people, but they were much, much stronger. However, Iyer had always kept this secret in his heart, and never revealed it to anyone. Some people's dragon bloodline awakening will have a very strong reaction, and the stronger the reaction, the purer the dragon bloodline is. Some dragon descendants' awakening is recessive, and the symptoms are not strong. Your physique is only slightly stronger than ordinary people, so you should belong to the recessive awakening of dragon descendants. He. Are you trying to tell me that I'm actually related to her? There are far more dragon descendants in this world than you can imagine, but that doesn't mean you are related, the mysterious woman said calmly. I want to know what happened here. What happened to my father and my big brother? Jane Fankel looked at the mysterious woman anxiously. It's complicated, and it's not something you can get involved in, so it's better if you don't know too much. But now that we are involved, do you think we can get out of this? Iyer said calmly. He didn't dare to completely agree with the mysterious woman, but he felt that her words had some credibility. Do you remember that there was a third man other than you two, old Max and Caesar? He's like us? He's like us, but he's also different from us. What do you mean? He's a real dragon, the shadow dragon, Habertim Morhaber, and he's the cause of all this. The mysterious woman looked at Jane Fankel and smiled. And he's your grandfather's grandfather. How is that possible? He looks old enough to be my son. That's the truth. How do you know? The mysterious woman laughed. According to seniority, I should be your grandmother. You. Is it strange? Dragons have long lives. Although their descendants can't live for thousands of years like the dragons, they still live longer than ordinary people. I'm 99 years old now. That's impossible. You look. Jane Fankel had wanted to say, you look like my daughter. However, she swallowed the words. Jane Fankel was still suspicious. She even suspected that this was some kind of parody show. The mysterious woman saw that Jane Fankel was still suspicious of her, so she continued. Actually, I'm your grandfather's sister, so it's fine if you call me Grandma. Of course, I'd prefer you to call me by my name, Varian Max. I'm not interested in your relationship. I just want to know what the fuck is going on, Iyer said impatiently. I don't know what's going on either. My teammates and I are only responsible for hunting him down, Habertim Morhaber. Hunting him down? Didn't you say he's your grandfather? So what? Since you're hunting him down, where are your teammates? They're where they should be. When are you going to act? That's a real dragon. You can think of it as the scariest creature in the world. Do you think you can kill him as you please? What else? Are you going to get a nuclear weapon and blow him up? If you can, I don't mind, Baryanki said. If you can, do you think I need you? Iyer said mockingly. For a moment, the three of them fell silent. Baryanki sat down and rested. At the same time, she took out a few compressed biscuits and gave them to Iyer and Jane Fankel. Iyer, who had just finished a biscuit, suddenly stood up. No, I can't stay here. It's too dangerous. Varianki glanced at Ire. You think you can leave? What do you mean? Is there something waiting for us outside? Not on the outskirts, but around us. Chapter 26:13. Do you know why we're here? Varian asked Marx in return. God knows, Ire said unhappily. It's because of this oak tree. Valerie patted the thick trunk and said, Her grandfather and I planted this tree together. We were only 8 years old back then. I'm not interested in your old stories. Ire was getting more and more annoyed. Of course. Our father told us that the oak tree was a sacred tree where the gods lived. It could resist the power of the devil. For a long time, I didn't understand what it meant. Until the day I awakened my dragon bloodline and came into contact with a world that didn't belong to ordinary people. It was also that day that I saw the devil from hell. Varian was still talking to herself. Ire and Jen Fankel could tell who Varian was referring to when she mentioned the devil. After that, I left the family and joined an organization, the Dragon Slayers. Valerie took a deep breath and continued. In the past few decades, I've been hunting dragons all over the world. I've earned a title, Dragon Slayer. Varian Marx rolled up the sleeve of her arm. There was a dragon tattoo on it. My life's wish is to baptize my body with the blood of Hobart Morhaber. Valerie suddenly revealed a terrifying and ferocious expression. She patted the trunk of the oak tree heavily. The thick trunk shook slightly, and the mist shrouding the area dissipated a lot. Varian was slightly dazed. She changed her mind and stroked the tree trunk lightly. To her, this tree carried too many memories. Under the protection of the oak tree, the devil's power can't reach it. Outside the range of the branches and leaves are the mist and the strange dragons. This is the power of the demonic dragon, Hobart Morhaber. When will the mist dissipate? Dissipate? As long as he doesn't retract his domain, it will never dissipate. Won't he get tired? Maybe, but it's like keeping your eyes open. Whenever you feel tired, you might close your eyes and rest for a while. Besides, Hobart Morhaber's endurance is much stronger than yours. In other words, we will be trapped here forever? My companions are deploying, and they have already informed their helpers. Someone will be willing to help you. Hobart Morhaber has a lot of enemies. It can even be said that he has enemies all over the world. Not long ago, he did a few big things and killed a lot of people. However, he also fought with us. Many of our people died, and he was injured. I think he might have come here to hide, but he neglected me. As one of his pursuers, I know him better than anyone else. Can the helper you found really defeat him? As long as there are enough people, there's hope, Varian said calmly. In fact, even she wasn't confident. After all, she had fought with Hobart Morhaber many times. He knew how cunning Hobart Morhaber was. No one was confident that they could defeat Hobart Morhaber. No one could guarantee that they would be able to kill him. However, this was an opportunity. After all, there weren't many chances for Hobart Morhaber to be injured. Being injured meant that he would be easier to deal with. Varian Marx was happy to choose this moment to deal with Hobart Morhaber. He did not hope to kill Hobart Morhaber. As long as she could injure him more severely, she would have achieved her goal. How long are we going to be trapped here? I still have an important contract to sign. The first thing you should think about now is not the contract, but how to stay alive. Varian glanced at Jane Fankel. In 3 days at most, this place will become a battlefield. Once the battle starts, you two might die here. What should we do? Can't you protect us? Protect you? Don't joke around. Our opponent is a demonic dragon, and it's the most cunning demonic dragon in history, Hobart Morhaber. No one will have the time to protect 2 ants at that time. You have no other choice but to protect yourselves. How do we protect ourselves? You must at least learn how to control and use the power contained in your blood. Although it won't give you sudden power, it will at least increase your magic resistance and immobility resistance. But what should we do? Jane Fankel's first reaction was to refuse. However, The next moment, she understood that this woman who called herself her grandmother would not be merciful to her just because of their blood relationship. "Trust me, you won't want to fall into Timor Haber's hands." Varian sneered at Jane Fankel. "Why do you think he's hiding here?" "Why? For your blood, of course," Varian said. "To him, you're the closest people to him. Your bloodlines are naturally compatible, so he needs your blood to recover from his injuries." "Wait. Who are you?" "My father and brother, they are also, of course, they think they are favored by their ancestors. In fact, they are just fattened pigs that could be slaughtered by Timor Haber at any time." Jane Fankel felt a little dizzy when she heard Varian's words. "Is there no way to save them?" "Haha. They willingly accepted Timor Haber's power, so they can't escape. Based on the current situation, we don't have the power to fight Timor Haber. If the two of them are still alive before our reinforcements arrive, they might have a chance to survive. However, if Timor Haber feels that his condition isn't good enough to fight against our reinforcements, he will definitely kill the two of them in order to quickly recover from his injuries." Varian Max looked at Jane Fankel. Jane Fankel was eager to give it a try. "Don't even think about saving them. No matter how much you say, they won't believe you. They might even expose their whereabouts. You are a merchant, so you should know that it's not worth it." Chapter 26:14. Right now, Qin Zhao was inside the river diagram. Qin Zhao soaked in the divine power potion. Although he couldn't control every cell at will, he was still able to do it. But Qin Zhao could still clearly feel the activity or weakness of every cell. However, the divine power elixir did not work on the cellular level. Qin Zhao's body had evolved many times with the golden key. It could be said to have reached an unbelievably perfect state. Of course, it didn't mean that Qin Zhao's body had evolved to the extreme. It was just that it had reached the limit of what Qin Zhao could bear with his current level. However, as the divine power potion seeped in, Qin Zhao's cells were giving off pleasant feedback. The divine power potion was very complicated, so complicated that Qin Zhao couldn't understand it. This was the domain of alchemists. The first thing Qin Zhao felt was the effect of the potion. Qin Zhao was most familiar with this feeling. After all, the first potion Qin Zhao came into contact with was the strength potion. It was something to lay a foundation for Qin Zhao. It could be said that all of Qin Zhao's power gains in the past were built on the premise of the strength potion. But now, he realized that something in his body had been triggered. Qin Zhao couldn't completely understand what it was either. That was because it was a feeling that was more detailed than that of cells. Right now, Qin Zhao was like a towering skyscraper. This gave Qin Zhao the feeling that someone was tearing down the foundation of a skyscraper and building and strengthening it at the same time. Yes, this was the feeling. There was pain, but there was also comfort. Therefore, it was difficult to tell whether it was pain or comfort, or both. The reconstruction process was not fast. Qin Zhao soaked in the divine power potion for 7 days and 7 nights. Qin Zhao realized that his body seemed to have changed. It wasn't a complete transformation. It was more like he was wearing a new set of clothes. From the inside to the outside, his senses had changed. Even his spirit, energy, and spirit had changed. Qin Zhao tested the sensations in his body. Under extreme conditions, the increase in strength was not much. However, it was still an obvious improvement. Qin Zhao returned to soak in the divine power potion. Qin Zhao had a new feeling. Something that had been hidden in his body for a long time exploded like a barrel of gunpowder that had been ignited. Agent X. Qin Zhao had once broken into a certain lab. Then, he unscrupulously poured Agent X into his mouth. Qin Zhao didn't feel much at the time. Even Qin Zhao had almost forgotten about it. That was because Agent X did not bring about too many changes to him. Moreover, Qin Zhao had cultivated many times and increased his realm. They also did not discover the existence of Drug X. He had always thought that it was because he couldn't absorb Agent X. Therefore, Qin Zhao had already metabolized Agent X. But at this moment, Chen Zhao realized something. It's not gone, it's always been there. However, it had turned into molecules and kept flowing in his body. But the divine power potion activated it. Not only had the X drug been activated, but the divine power drug had also made up for its deficiencies. This chemical process makes it even more perfect. It made Qin Zhao's foundation even more perfect. Qin Zhao's body was baptized by Agent X again and again. The extreme chemical reaction between science and magic was happening in his body. Biological functions and thinking were actually chemical reactions. The chemical reaction of amino acids, sugar, and dopamine caused the cerebral cortex to produce a phenomenon of microcurrent discharge. The so-called emotions were actually the electrical discharge of the brain. Qin Zhao realized that his brain had become very active. That was a sign that spiritual energy was spreading outward. Qin Zhao's spiritual energy was actually not very strong. What was strong was Qin Zhao's soul. After all, it was because of the soul key. Qin Zhao had devoured many soul fragments. These fragments fed back to his soul, making it tough and indestructible. But Qin Zhao's spiritual energy was weak. After all, Qin Zhao walked the path of strengthening. He had almost never actively cultivated his spiritual energy. He had always been strengthening passively. When his soul became stronger, his spiritual energy would naturally become stronger. But now, Qin Zhao realized that his spiritual energy was growing exponentially. Agent X didn't just seem to be acting on his body. It was also happening in his brain. However, Qin Zhao's control over his spiritual energy was extremely weak. Qin Zhao's spiritual energy was like a mist. It floated out and became thinner and thinner until he could not feel anything at all. Qin Zhao could not condense his spiritual energy together like those spiritual magic masters and form telekinesis. Qin Zhao could only use it for the most basic function, perception. But when his spiritual energy spread out, it was still within Qin Zhao's domain. Within Qin Zhao's 1,500-meter domain, his spiritual energy dissipated before it could spread out. On the other hand, the things that spiritual power could perceive were clearer and more comprehensive than the things that one's domain could perceive. The two overlapped in terms of perception. This also caused Qin Zhao's spiritual energy growth to be of little value. The spiritual energy's function overlapped with the domain, but it could not reach the domain's range, clarity, and sensitivity. So, spiritual energy was almost useless to Qin Zhao. Of course, to say that it was completely useless was not entirely true. If someone tried to use soul attack on Qin Zhao, they would first have to destroy the spiritual energy that Qin Zhao spread out. The same kind of attack would be weakened before it could even touch Qin Zhao. When Qin Zhao had fought Yadu Rainster last time, he had suffered from a soul attack. That thing was really hard to bear. But there weren't many enemies who could use soul attacks. There were even fewer soul attacks that could threaten him. Of course, Qin Zhao did not mind having more. It was never bad to have more skills. Qin Zhao cared more about the growth of his body and strength. Qin Zhao could not be sure how strong he was now. However, Qin Zhao still had a simple test. That was to release a neutron star with all his strength. He wanted to see how powerful the neutron star was. With the improvement of his basic body and the activation of Agent X, Qin Zhao's body improved in all aspects. Qin Zhao could not use accurate numbers for comparison. However, the power of the neutron star he released could flatten a 100-meter hill. This destructive power was quite impressive. Moreover, the 100-meter range was almost an absolute destructive range. Even Qin Zhao could be heavily injured in this range. Compared to before, the absolute destructive power of a 50-meter range was 2 times greater. The destructive radius was 2 times greater. Compared to a flat surface, it was 4 times greater. Moreover, the destructive power within the radius was 5 times greater. Chapter 26:15. During the third soak, Qin Zhao felt that he had a deeper understanding of his divinized giant form. All the inadequacies in the past were suddenly filled and perfected. The divinized giant form was more advanced than the basic foundation stones and the activation of the X drug. However, the improvement wasn't as great as the two, because an increase in the foundation meant an increase in the base. The improvement of the divinized giant form was obvious, but not as great as expected. What really improved was Chen Zhao's control over his power. Then Chen Zhao soaked in the divine power potion again. However, he felt that the potion's effects had clearly weakened. Chen Zhao thought to himself, this thing is indeed good. I'll get Phaeton Attack to make more next time. Of course, the other materials were easy to take care of. It was just the 100 bloodlines of the King of Power's subordinates. Qin Zhao had to collect them for a year. After all, Qin Zhao couldn't wander around hell every day. He also couldn't meet the subordinates of the King of Power every day. After the fourth soak, Qin Zhao had completely absorbed the potion's effects. The originally colorful liquid had now turned into a pure transparent color. Qin Zhao could feel that the divine power potion was still effective on him. It was just that the amount wasn't enough. Qin Zhao started cultivating in the small world again. Currently, in its complete state, Qin Zhao could create 100,000 high-density white dwarfs weighing tens of thousands of tons at the same time. In terms of pure destructive power, Qin Zhao's full-powered attack could destroy an entire city instantly. Through the physical movement of the 100,000 black balls, he could easily destroy most enemies. However, Qin Zhao felt that this wasn't the limit of the small world. The growth of the small world hadn't reached its limit either. In Qin Zhao's previous trip to Hell, the small world had absorbed large amounts of power from the demon lords. However, the absorption method was very crude. The amount of power he could use was very little. There was even more power stored in the small world. Qin Zhao needed to refine this power and make it his true power. As he continued to refine it, the power of the demon lords made the heavenly patterns in the small world flourish. Suddenly, Qin Zhao realized that there was a green fruit in the small world. He didn't know when it had formed. The green fruit was very abrupt and solid. A solid object had actually appeared in his small world. The fruit was very bright and green, as tender as a crisp apple. Qin Zhao tilted his head and looked at the green fruit. With a thought, the fruit fell from the heavenly pattern. Qin Zhao waved his hand and the fruit landed in his hand. There was nothing special about it. Qin Zhao wasn't afraid of the poison. He took a bite. In an instant, an extremely rich life force spread in his mouth along with the juicy flesh of the fruit. Ah! Qin Zhao moaned in pleasure. None of the ingredients in the world could compare to this fruit. It was a completely unfamiliar texture, but it was more delicious than any other ingredient. In fact, the taste was not something that ordinary people could eat. This was because ordinary people simply could not withstand such a strong life force. As the saying goes, it's too weak to be nourished. Qin Zhao ate the fruit in a few bites and felt his vitality increase again. Apart from increasing his vitality, the fruit did not seem to have other effects. However, if he diluted the life force in the flesh of the fruit, he didn't know if it could be given to his family. Qin Zhao continued cultivating in the small world. At the same time, he took out a few frozen demon lord corpses. Beelzebub Zophi had helped him seal it to stop the power from flowing out of the demon lord's corpses. While absorbing the power from the corpses, Qin Zhao realized that a second green fruit had formed in the small world. Qin Zhao thought for a moment and put the fruit away. He continued to focus on refining the demon lord's power. Using their power as nutrients, he continuously nourished the small world. Qin Zhao could already feel that the power of the small world had surpassed his own. Just then, Qin Zhao realized that the small world was feeding back to him. The two couldn't be improved separately, because Qin Zhao himself was the one maintaining the small world. First, the control of the small world had increased from 100,000 white dwarfs to 500,000. It was 5 times more than before. At the same time, Qin Zhao could condense 10 compact neutron stars through the small world without using his body. Each one weighed 100 million tons. The speed of condensation also increased greatly. The process that would have taken more than 10 minutes could be completed in a few minutes now. The 10 compact neutron stars circled around him. Qin Zhao could control their speed at will. This meant that most attacks would not be able to get close to him. Qin Zhao cultivated in the river map for almost half a year. However, only a few hours had passed outside. Every time he came out of the river map, he would feel like he was back in the world. Just then, Qin Zhao realized that there were a few missed calls from Zhang Ting in China. "Hey Zhang Ting, what's up?" "Boss, we finished the education system you asked us to write last time. We also invited a few university professors and experts to discuss it. I'll send the document to you now." "Sure, send it over." "Oh, the company's on holiday, right?" "Everyone's on holiday. Only a few people are doing year-end summaries. They'll be released in a day or two." A proper company wouldn't let the boss go on holiday just because he wanted to. Everyone would just drop their work and go home to enjoy themselves. A normal holiday would require a few people to do the final summary. At the same time, they would also notify their partner companies about the progress. "Sure, check your account. I'll transfer some money to you. Go to the bank and exchange it. Then send a big red packet to those who delayed their holidays." "Boss, you're not feeding your employees, you're feeding your enemies. You're giving them such high benefits now. If you can't give them such great benefits in the future, they'll only be disloyal. I'll only be richer in the future," Qin Zhao said, unconcerned. Sigh. Zhang Ting had a headache now. She even hated Qin Zhao a little. It was impossible for him to resign, not in this lifetime. She really couldn't find a boss more generous and easy to serve than Qin Zhao. This was much more comfortable than when she was her own boss. "Oh, boss, do you know the joke of a 40-meter knife? I'm overseas, but it doesn't mean I don't know the jokes online. Say, if X can create a 40-meter knife, what's the effect?" Chapter 26:16. When the density of matter reaches or approaches that of a neutron star, the form of matter is meaningless, Qin Zhao said. There's no fundamental difference between a ball and a knife. At the same weight, a ball the size of a ping-pong ball is more lethal than a 40-meter knife. Boss, I'm talking in camera language, not real physics. The effect of a 40-meter knife is much better than a ping-pong ball. No, the setting of X needs to be considered from the perspective of physics. Fine. Zhang Ting didn't understand why Qin Zhao had to focus on physics. To her, the characteristic of X itself wasn't scientific. But Qin Zhao had to make an unscientific character conform to the characteristics of physics. Wasn't that putting the cart before the horse? But he was the boss. Also, book a suite in a Magic City hotel on the 15th day of the year. It'll be the venue for our company's gathering. I'll pay for it. Zhang Ting wasn't surprised by Qin Zhao's request at all. Qin Zhao had always been so generous. If he didn't make this request, Zhang Ting would find it strange. Also, book 2 plane tickets or train tickets to Dragon Tiger Mountain in Jiangxi. Boss, you're going to burn incense? No, I'm old friends with the Celestial Masters sect leader. We're having a gathering. Fine, that's all you rich people want now. Zhang Ting clearly misunderstood Qin Zhao. After hanging up the phone, Zhang Ting told the good news that the boss was going to give them a bonus. Seeing that it was still early, Qin Zhao flew into the sky again. Qin Zhao was curious. What was his limit? In hell, he'd flown 300,000 meters in the sky. But that was in hell. Hell was countless times bigger than the human world. The thickness of the atmosphere was also much thicker. Gravity could no longer restrict Qin Zhao. Now, Qin Zhao could resist the strong radiation of the universe. He could even absorb it and turn it into his own magic. This was no longer a limiting factor for Qin Zhao. What restricted him was the thinness of the air. Even Qin Zhao needed to breathe now. Of course, it wasn't difficult for Qin Zhao to temporarily change to internal breathing. Even ordinary people might be able to do it. For example, some people could dive for 20 to 30 minutes without any equipment. This was a typical internal breathing technique. Qin Zhao could absorb the oxygen in the water. but in the absolute vacuum of the universe, he couldn't do it. Qin Zhao could already fly up to 80,000 meters in the air. Generally, the altitude of a commercial plane was only 8 to 12,000 meters. 20,000 meters above them would be the ozone layer. Qin Zhao's current limit was the middle layer. Above them was the dissipation layer, where there was almost no air. Even Qin Zhao's small world couldn't gather enough air. The air density here was a billionth of that at sea level. In other words, 100 billion cubic meters of air here was equivalent to 1 cubic meter of air at sea level. Here, Qin Zhao couldn't use neutron star, white dwarf, and other skills. This was because Qin Zhao's neutron stars and white dwarfs were mainly made by condensing air. However, Qin Zhao could not even absorb air here, let alone create high-density neutron stars and white dwarfs. But in this environment that was close to a vacuum, there was no air resistance. Qin Zhao's speed also increased greatly. This was the harshest environment on Earth. Even the two poles were far from this place. Every time he reached an extreme environment, and stayed there for a long time, Qin Zhao's body would adapt. His body's functions would start to coordinate, allowing him to adapt to the environment. Qin Zhao doubted if he could really adapt to a vacuum environment one day. Of course, it could also be an evolution of his body's functions. It could also be that his cultivation had reached the point where he could fly. Qin Zhao looked like he could fly now, but he was still far from reaching the legendary 9 heavens, plucking the moon and the 9 hells. Most of Qin Zhao's powers were unnatural, but many of them were related to science. Qin Zhao moved. In a few seconds he returned to Mirror Lake. He followed the tunnel at the bottom of Mirror Lake and entered thousands of meters underground. After a few months, a large number of underground creatures had appeared here again. Last time, Qin Zhao had already killed a batch. Moreover, the flesh of these creatures was all used as ingredients for Marina's restaurant. The growth rate of these underground creatures was very fast, and some of them were large enough to threaten the safety of humans. Most of them should have gathered here from the tunnel that extended in all directions. The reason was that there was water here, so the creatures would gather here. If there was water, there would be food. Even humans had this instinct, let alone animals. The creatures that gathered here from other places were clearly different from the aquatic creatures here. The creatures from other places were clearly much larger. On the other hand, the aquatic creatures here were obviously much smaller. Back then, Qin Zhao had killed many of the creatures in this lake, but he'd still left some small ones. But in a few months, they'd grown considerably. Qin Zhao had considered using this place as a breeding farm. So, this time, he was especially merciful. Even if some creatures attacked him first, he would choose to dodge most of the time instead of killing them with a slap. After all, every single creature here was extremely valuable as a source of food. Of course, Qin Zhao wouldn't use their meat as ingredients for his restaurant without trying them first. Qin Zhao had tried every creature here first. He had also tested them to ensure that their meat was safe. Qin Zhao made some records, such as the forms and habits of every creature here. Not every creature here was aggressive. Some of them ate the minerals that had softened in the lake water. These creatures were Qin Zhao's favorite because they weren't aggressive and had a simple source of food. Qin Zhao wondered if he should open up a larger space underground for a breeding farm. After circling around, he brought a few creatures back to the surface. However, most of them died as soon as they returned. Only a mollusk that looked like a snail was still alive. Chapter 26:17. Qin Zhao looked at the mollusks that he named stone snails. They were omnivores. Qin Zhao had observed them before. An adult stone snail could weigh up to 700 kilograms, but half of its weight was in its stone shell. The stone shell of a stone snail was very hard. Apart from its own shell, it would also use mud and sharp rocks to stick on its shell. As long as other predators attacked it, it would immediately retreat into its shell. Its main food was water plants and some minerals. Qin Zhao really liked stone snail meat. Marina's restaurant's sales were also very good. A plate of 150 grams of stone snail meat cost $150 at Marina's restaurant. At least 200 servings of stone snail meat were sold every day. After deducting the costs, Qin Zhao's profit from the stone snail meat alone reached $25,000 a day. Therefore, if it was just Marina restaurant alone, the supply of stone snails would exceed the demand. Marina's restaurant would at most use 30 kilograms a day. It wasn't even 1/10 of an adult stone snail. Moreover, stone snails weren't cheap. Qin Zhao was thinking about raising stone snails on a large scale. At least, that was if he could raise them. Stone snails could adapt to the environment on the ground. Now, it depended on its growth cycle and food intake. In the morning, after Fei Lai went to work, Qin Zhao called Azak. "Azak, come to my house." You don't know? Okay, I'll give you the address." A while later, Azak arrived at Qin Zhao's house. Like most people, he was shocked when he saw Qin Zhao's Mirror Lake Manor. Even Azak was shocked. Qin Zhao's wealth was greater than he'd imagined. "Boss." Azak entered the manor and saw Qin Zhao lying on a chair in the yard. "Okay, come with me." Qin Zhao glanced at Azak and walked into the woods. Azak didn't know what Qin Zhao was going to do, but he still followed obediently. Just then, a giant snail appeared in front of Isaac. "Boss! What's this?" Azak was a bit scared. This snail was really too big. Its shell was already around 2 meters long. "Don't worry, it's not aggressive. I called you here because I want you to study some of its data, raise it, breed it, and its needs for food. Right now, I only know that it mainly eats aquatic plants." "Okay, boss. What's the use of this thing?" "Its meat provides my restaurant with nearly $10 million in profit every year." "What do you think it's good for?" Isaac almost slapped himself. He actually questioned the task his boss had given him. "Also, how's the formation of your Marine Biology Research Institute team?" "Currently, the initial formation has been completed, but there are no projects worth researching yet." "Have you heard of the mysterious island?" "I know." As a marine biology professional, how could Isaac not know about the mysterious island? That would cause a sensation in the biological world, especially in marine biology. Several famous international teams tried to contact the owner of the mysterious island and the person in charge. They hoped to conduct research on the mystical island, but they were all rejected. "Your team is going to Mysterious Island to study the giant sea creatures there," Qin Zhao said. "Boss, you've already contacted the person in charge of the mystical island?" "The mystical island is mine." "Why?" Isaac stared at Qin Zhao in shock. The mystical island belonged to his boss. He'd heard that the mystical island's commercial value was over $100 billion. The creatures on the mystical island had already shocked the scientific world. There were even huge repercussions in society. There were all kinds of news about the mystical island almost every day. Even Hollywood was planning to get in on the action. Some film companies even planned to make movies about the mystical island. The outside world had also been guessing who the mysterious owner of the mystical island was. He didn't expect Qin Zhao to be the owner of the mystical island. He recalled that before the mystical island had appeared, Qin Zhao had already recruited him and formed a marine biology research team. This meant that Qin Zhao already knew of the mystical island's existence. He could even calculate the mystical island's rise. This made Isaac respect Qin Zhao even more. What kind of team could calculate the rise and fall of an island? Unless it was the world's top mathematical team and had the help of a supercomputer. Otherwise, Oken wouldn't be able to calculate when an island would rise from the sea. "Boss, I'll do my best to complete the mission you gave me. I won't disappoint you." "That's for the best." Qin Zhao nodded. Qin Zhao didn't care if Isaac was ambitious or not. Everyone had the right to aspire to a better life. Just then, Qin Zhao received a call. It was from Zola. "Qin, I'm planning to release a new spring collection. Do you need it?" "Now?" "If you're free. Then I'll go over now." Isaac glanced at Qin Zhao. After Qin Zhao hung up, he said, Boss, if you're busy, I'll leave first. Okay. Oh, I'll have someone send this snail over. After sending Isaac off, Qin Zhao went to the Baroness' headquarters. It was just like his first time here. It was still so busy. Designers, assistants, and models were all moving around the venue. A tall model walked hurriedly and bumped into Qin Zhao. Are you blind? Sorry. Qin Zhao smiled and took 2 steps back. Shut up, bitch. Nat jogged over. When he looked at Qin Zhao, he had a big smile on his face. Qin, you're here. Come with me. Nat pulled Qin Zhao's wrist and walked to his dressing room. Smiling, Qin Zhao broke free from Nat's hand without batting an eyelid. Nat had always said that he was straight. However, Qin Zhao found it hard to believe someone who was used to pointing at him. As if he didn't feel it, Nat pulled Qin Zhao into the dressing room. All of you get out, Nat said. Ava, you stay. Ava was wearing glasses, but it wasn't hard to tell that she was a beauty. To be honest, the Baroness employees, whether it was normal runners, assistants, or designers, were almost all handsome men and beautiful women, not to mention the models here. Even if it was Sissy Knight, he was still a handsome guy. Nat's clothes were more feminine. He was indeed a handsome guy, and he was the kind of handsome guy who had quite an imposing aura. He wasn't any worse than Hollywood stars. 9 Heavens God King. Chapter 26:18. Chen, take off your shirt and pants. Nat had taken advantage of Chen Zhao many times. Every season, Chen Zhao would come over to get his body measured. Then, Nat would drag him in. Actually, it was fine as long as he was familiar with it. Chen Zhao hoped that Triss would help him measure his body. However, Triss would measure Fei Lai every time. Qin Zhao did not want Nat to touch her. When Qin Zhao took off his clothes, Nat and Ava's eyes widened. Chen, your body is perfect, Nat said, swallowing. Ava wiped away the saliva at the corner of her mouth and gently touched Qin Zhao's chest. Qin Zhao's skin was slightly yellow. His 2 chest muscles were like exquisite brass, shining with a metallic luster. The intoxicating feeling made Ava a bit dazed. Smiling, Qin Zhao pushed Ava's hand away. Only then did Ava reluctantly move her hand away. Ava glanced at Nat. Nat had walked behind the curtain to take out his tools. How much do you charge? Ava asked in a low voice. Qin Zhao was stunned. Did she think of him as a model? He heard that many models had special part-time jobs. Did he look like a part-time model? How much do you think I'm worth? Ava gritted her teeth and looked Qin Zhao up and down. $2,000. Qin Zhao chuckled. He did not expect Ava to pay $2,000. After all, an assistant's salary was not high. Even if an assistant designer's salary was higher than that of assistants in other industries. But $2,000 was not a small amount for most people. She was actually willing to spend $2,000 on him. Or was he worth $2,000? Just then, Nat walked out. Ava immediately shut her mouth. Nat glared at Ava and she immediately shrunk her head. It seemed that Nat was quite intimidating in front of Ava. While Nat was about to measure, Ava gave Qin Zhao another name card. She gestured to Qin Zhao with her hand. Call me. After Nat finished his preparations, he finally came to measure Qin Zhao's body. Chen, your body is really perfect. It's like a piece of art. Full of power, but it doesn't destroy the beauty. With that, Nat patted Qin Zhao's butt. Turn around. Nat was always like this. He would habitually take advantage of Qin Zhao, and then change the topic as if nothing had happened. Rubbing his forehead, Qin Zhao said, Nat, if you want, I can train you for free. If Knight really agreed, Qin Zhao wouldn't mind taking revenge on him. Unfortunately, Nat did not fulfill his wish. Forget it, I'm not your style, Knight said. I prefer this kind of neutral style. You call this neutral? Apart from your sexual characteristics, which part of you look like a man? Are you an idiot? All you can do is stand there? Don't you know how to lend a hand? Press the other end of the ruler down. Nate suddenly changed his attitude and shouted at Ava. Not only was Ava shocked, but Qin Zhao was also shocked. There was no doubt that Nat was an outstanding designer. However, his personality was truly unflattering. Just then, Zola pushed the door open and entered. "Hi, Chen." Zola pulled a chair over and looked at Knight and Ava. Qin Zhao was the only one left, controlled by Knight. "Zola." Qin Zhao nodded and continued to cooperate with Nat's torture. "Your body is getting better. As long as you keep exercising, anyone can do it. I interact with models every day. I've seen at least 1,000 models' bodies, but I've never seen a man's body like yours. It's so thrilling." Zola shook her head. "You look like a lion. You don't have exaggerated lines, but there's a mysterious danger." "See, Chen, even Zola says that." Nat seemed to have found someone who understood him. Although Knight said that, he did not slack off at all in his work. His work was extremely meticulous. For example, the circumference of Qin Zhao's wrist, upper and lower wrist, neck circumference, neck length. Every measurement had to be carefully measured. "Ava, grab that one," Nat scolded again. Even with Zola present, Nat's attitude towards Ava did not change at all. Just then, Zola stood up and pulled the other end of the ruler. Seeing that her boss had started, Ava could only retreat to the side and watch. "Does it feel tight?" Nat asked. A little looser." "How about this? You can loosen it a little more," Qin Zhao said. "Yeah. That's more like it. Shen, are you interested in buying shares in the Baroness?" Are you sure?" Qin Zhao looked at Zola in surprise. In the bank's evaluation, the Baroness was also a high-quality property. It provided Zola with generous returns every year. It could be said that as long as she asked the bank to use the Baroness shares as collateral, the bank could give a low-interest loan that was 5 times the Baroness valuation. Zola had 100% control over the shares. Even when her father, Rasfa, wanted to buy it, she rejected him. Ava found it strange. Finding a model to buy shares in the Baroness? "I have no choice," Zola said helplessly. "I'm really short on money recently." "The bank didn't lend you money?" "The interest is still too high," Zola said. "At least for me, it's too much pressure. Didn't I promise that as long as you need it, I can lend you money at the lowest interest?" Zola shook her head. "I need more money." "How much?" $1.5 billion. "You don't need to pay that much, right?" "My father wants me to buy more shares," Zola said. "He needs some cash flow." To put it bluntly, Zola and Rasfa were father and daughter. Zola was destined to inherit Rasfa's wealth in the future. The more Rasfa had, the more inheritance tax he would have to pay in the future. Thus, Rasfa and Zola wanted to reduce their wealth through some normal operations. "Are you interested in the Baroness?" Zola continued the previous topic. "Yes," Qin Zhao said directly. "How many shares are you planning to sell to me?" "Not more than 20%. "Then how much are you planning to sell it for?" Qin Zhao asked. At this moment, Knight's movements were a little sluggish. "The Baroness' current market value is $2.5 billion. I want a 50% premium. According to your request, exactly $1.5 billion. Qin Zhao chuckled. "I agree to the deal in general, but you can't decide the price alone. You should talk to my lawyer first." Chapter 26:19. Ava felt that she'd just done something really stupid. She just used $2,000 to insult a billionaire. More accurately, she'd insulted herself. Hopefully, he wouldn't mind. Qin Zhao didn't plan on doing that. Or rather, he'd already forgotten about it. "Okay, Qin," Nat said. "Your clothes for this season will take about 5 days." "Thanks." Qin Zhao nodded and looked at Zola. "Let's eat together. I'm afraid I won't be able to find time soon. The spring fashion show is about to start. I feel like you're busier than me." Zola rolled her eyes. "Of course I'm busier than you. You're richer than me, but you give all the work to others while I have to do it myself. You can also choose to give it to others. We'll see, Zola said casually. Actually, Chen Zhao could understand a strong woman like Zola. It was simply unimaginable to throw his job to someone else. Moreover, not everyone was as lazy as Chen Zhao. As the saying went, power was the deadliest poison. No one could give it up. Chen Zhao's car drove out of the Baroness' headquarters. Just then, a luxury car blocked Chen Zhao's path. Hi, Mr. Chen. Nice to meet you. I'm Madala. Hi, sorry, I'm in a hurry. Can you excuse me? Chen Zhao clearly didn't plan on getting to know this man who'd suddenly appeared. In fact, Chen Zhao didn't like this behavior. If he really wanted to get to know Chen Zhao, he had to be more polite. He shouldn't block Chen Zhao's way like this. Madala didn't mind Chen Zhao's attitude. Mr. Chen, I might have forgotten to introduce myself. I'm the CEO of Viller Investment Management Company. I have a large amount of cash. I can give you great rewards. You can contact my assistant or my lawyer. I'll consider your offer. Mr. Chen, since we've met, why don't we talk now or find a place? Sorry, I'm in a hurry. Madala clearly didn't realize that his behavior had already caused Chen Zhao's displeasure. Then let's push away the trivial matters. I don't think there's anything more important than our cooperation. Chen Zhao no longer planned on maintaining his disguise with Madala. Chen Zhao looked at Madala with a dark expression. If you want to work with me, you have to learn manners first. Hearing this, Matilla's face darkened as well. Yellow monkey! I dare you to say it again. White-skinned pig, when your mother gave birth to you, did she forget to teach you manners? When it came to arguing, Chen Zhao had never been afraid of anyone. You will pay for your words, monkey, Madala said fiercely. Chen Zhao pointed his middle finger at Madala. Chen Zhao wasn't someone who could be easily fooled. Matilla's eyes flashed with killing intent. Chen Zhao didn't care. Looks can't kill. On the way back, Chen Zhao called Alex. Alex, do you know Viller Investment Management? I know, what's wrong? Today, there was a man who claimed to be the chairman of Viller Investment Management Company. I think he was called Madala. You didn't promise him anything, did you? No, that Madala really pissed me off. What do you know? I'm not very familiar with Viller Investment Management Company, but it's very famous in the industry. Is it very influential? No, it's just that they have a lot of dirty tricks up their sleeves. Most of the people or companies that work with them have been scammed by them without exception. What's their main trick? The most common method is to gain the trust of the partner and hand the company over to them to manage. Then, they will sell the company to a third party as an agent. They are very good at this kind of thing from a legal perspective. Once the transaction is completed, it will be impossible for the victim to get the company back even if he wants to. Alex continued to say, this is what they do on the surface, but there are a lot of things that they don't do on the surface. It is said that some people were forced to hand over their companies to them. As for how they forced them, you can use your imagination. Although I know that you are very skilled in certain aspects, they are professionals. Kidnapping? Blackmail? That's about it. Anyway, it's just colluding with the local gangs and doing some shady business. You have to be careful. Okay, got it. As soon as Chen Zhao hung up, another call came in. The caller was none other than Morgari. Hey Morgari, how come you have time to call me? Chen, someone wants to deal with you. I just got a job. Someone wants me to kidnap your family. Is that person called Madala? You already know? I just know this person. We just had a feud not too long ago. Do you need me to do anything? Chen Zhao and Morgari were the kind of people who wouldn't contact each other for tens of thousands of years. Even during festivals, they would only send each other a congratulatory message. But they both knew that they were each other's friends. They would only appear when the other person needed them. No need, Chen Zhao said calmly. After a moment of silence, Chen Zhao said, by the way, do you have anyone who's really short of money and willing to do anything for it? Ha! I have a lot of people like that. I want people who have something to care about, not people who have nothing to care about and are all alone. What do you want to do? Ha! Make something happen, of course. Qin Zhao's laughter had a hint of coldness. Then you better be more detailed. After all, they're not ordinary people. If there's just a little bit of evidence, they can get away. I know. Pick someone and tell him to go somewhere. I'll meet him there. Qin Zhao didn't plan on letting Marguerite give him his contact number. Okay, got it. What else do you need me to do? Qin Zhao made another call. This time, it was to inform Alex. He told her that he had a plan. After a moment of silence, Alex agreed. Qin Zhao went to the kindergarten again. Chen, why are you here? School's not over yet. Clive looked at Qin Zhao's sudden visit in confusion. There's something I need to talk to you about. Huh? Someone might attack my children in the next few days, Qin Zhao said. If so, are you and Anpa confident in protecting them? If not, let them go on holiday for now. We'll talk about it after this is over. Divine King of the Nine Heavens. Chapter 2620. Berkeley was one of the poorest neighborhoods in Los Angeles. How poor was it? Up to 40% of the neighborhood was homeless. As far as the eye could see, there were only homeless people. Bull and his family lived in this neighborhood. Dirty and messy were no words to describe how poor the neighborhood was. Even the cashiers at the Golden Arches had bulletproof glass. Any restaurant was only open from 10 in the morning to 4 in the afternoon. After 4 in the afternoon, one would definitely be robbed. Bull returned home. His wife's voice came immediately. Vitan, where did you go last night? His wife's tone carried a hint of questioning. Out drinking with friends, Bull replied tiredly. You know we need money now, right? You know Claire needs medical bills, right? You know we haven't paid our rent, utilities, and phone bills this month, right? You're still in the mood to drink? His wife's tone grew angrier. Why can't you find a proper job? You think I don't want to? But who would want a guy who's been in prison? Bull let out a deafening roar of his own. Then why are you in prison? The couple had already started their daily quarrel. At this moment, a timid voice interrupted the couple. A little girl, holding a dirty doll in her arms, stood by the bedroom door. Cough. Daddy, Mommy, did you fight again? The couple immediately stopped fighting. No, Mommy and Daddy are just acting. Then can you stop acting? Claire doesn't like it. Bull glared at his wife and then looked at his daughter as gently as possible. Of course, no problem. Claire's complexion was very bad. She was born with no immune system. She was also known as a glass person. Bull and his wife couldn't afford to create a completely isolated environment for her. So she had to take antibiotics constantly. But as she took more and more, the effect of the antibiotics was greatly reduced. Both her body and the bacteria in her began to develop resistance. This led to frequent infections in the past 2 years. The slightest symptom was a high fever. More serious was a physiological imbalance. Her bodily functions became seriously abnormal, and she even temporarily lost her function. The only way to completely solve Claire's disease was to change her system. That was to transplant someone else's bone marrow to create an immune system in her own body. Beauregard's marrow was a match for Claire's. However, a bone marrow transplant would cost $200,000. That was something Bull could never afford. Claire was 5 years old, and when she was a year old Beauregard had been in prison. It was because she was desperate to raise money for Claire's surgery. The result was predictable. Not only did he not get the money, but he also went to jail. Daddy, I want you to sleep with me. All right. Bull had a ferocious look on his face, but when it came to his daughter, he didn't seem to mind at all. It was as if he had changed his face, never showing even a trace of viciousness. Lying on the bed with Claire in his arms, Claire whispered, Daddy, I feel a little uncomfortable. Borai's heart skipped a beat as he had a bad feeling. Are you feeling unwell? I feel like I can't breathe. Bowles sat up abruptly. When did it start? It started last night. Claire scratched her neck. There were many slight scratches on her neck. Every time I do this a few times, it seems to be better. Claire opened her mouth wide and started inhaling and exhaling, but this time, Claire didn't seem to be getting better. Bo quickly informed his wife and dialed the emergency number. The couple had no time to bicker. They followed the ambulance to the hospital. Claire was sent to the emergency room, and the couple anxiously waited for the result outside. Not long after, a doctor walked out of the emergency room, took off his mask, and looked at the couple in front of him. Are you the patient's parents? Yes. How is Claire? Do you know the patient's exact condition? The couple became more and more uneasy. Bowles asked, What's wrong with Claire? The bacterial infection caused a chain reaction that caused her respiratory tract to become inflamed. But she only took antibiotics 3 days ago. According to our blood tests, the antibiotics are completely ineffective. That means she'll be infected as soon as she leaves the isolation room, the doctor said. I suggest you arrange an operation for her immediately. Even if she's in the isolation room, it doesn't mean she's completely safe. Bowles slumped into a chair, his eyes filled with despair. His wife covered her face and sobbed softly. Just then, Bowles' phone rang. Bowles didn't answer, but it rang again. Bowles glanced at the caller ID and walked to an empty corner. Boss. Are you busy, Bowles? Boss. I want to borrow money from you. How much? $200,000. I promise I'll pay you back, no matter the interest. Bowles, are you short of money? My daughter needs an operation, but I can't afford it right now. But I promise I have a way to get the money. Bowles promised. Bowles, borrowing money is out of the question. Bowles' face turned ugly. He had expected this outcome. After all, he didn't have a stable job. The man was his boss, not his father. How could he lend him money? It would be a waste of money. But, the man on the other end said, I have a job. Are you willing to take it? If you do, the money for your daughter's operation should be no problem. What job? I'll take it. Jail. What? Take the blame? Yes and no. I don't understand. I'll give you an address. Go there and wait. Someone will contact you. Sure. Bowles didn't have time to think. He hurried to the address. It was an empty beach. There wasn't a single person. Rocks and rotten wood were everywhere. Bowles waited there with a heavy heart. However, no one came even when the sky turned dark. Just when he thought that the person had stood him up, a figure appeared in the distance. Bowles immediately charged toward the figure. When he got closer, he realized that it was an Asian. Bowles asked hesitantly, Are you the person our boss mentioned? Chen Zhao smiled at Bowles. You need money? Chapter 26-21. Of course. If I didn't need money, do you think I'd be here? Bowles said bluntly. Then I'm the one you're waiting for. How much can you give me? Bowles wanted to know how much money Chen Zhao could give him, not what he needed him to do. As long as the price was right, he didn't mind taking the blame for this Asian. Enough for you to be a Hollywood star every day. I need the exact amount. I need a lot of money right now. Here's a check for $2 million. You can cash it at the bank now. Bowles was taken aback. 2 million USD? This wasn't what he'd expected. After all, taking the blame for someone in Los Angeles cost tens of thousands of dollars. $2 million? You're not asking me to take the death penalty, are you? Bowles paled in fear. Are you willing to accept the death penalty? Bowles' expression was conflicted. After a while, he finally looked up. I'm willing. Chen Zhao finally smiled. Don't worry, it's not the death penalty. Chen Zhao was also testing Bowles. He knew Bowles' rough situation. He knew that Bowles had a seriously ill daughter. He needed a lot of money. For the sake of his sick daughter, he could bear the consequences of trading his life for another's. This meant that he loved his daughter. This was what Qin Zhao needed. If Bull didn't have anything to worry about, Qin Zhao wouldn't dare to use him. Are you sure you want to give me a 2 million commission? It's not a commission. It's a deposit, Qin Zhao said calmly. Deposit? Bull's eyes almost popped out. Are you sure you're not messing with me? The check is in your hand. You can cash it at the bank now. The bank is long closed now. Ha! I made an appointment with a bank. They'll delay the closing time for me. Bull looked at the check in his hand. What exactly do you need me to do? My car's over there. I'll take you to the bank. Bull thought for a moment and finally nodded. He didn't have anything for Qin Zhao to covet. The most valuable thing he had was the check in his hand. Qin Zhao had personally delivered it to him. Therefore, he did not need the other party to ask for anything from him. Sitting in Qin Zhao's luxury car and feeling the soft cushion, Bull asked, Can you tell me now? In the next 2 days, someone will look for you and ask you to kidnap my family. Bewildered, Bull stared at Qin Zhao in astonishment. And then? Record everything he said to you. Then my family will disappear for a few days, and on the 3rd day after the incident, the police will break into your hiding place, arrest you, and rescue my family. Bull's mind was still in a daze. And then? Then you will expose that person. You will say that all of this was ordered by him. At the same time, you will take out all the evidence that you prepared beforehand. Do you have a grudge against that person? He. Since he found people to kidnap my family, of course, there's a grudge between them. But there should be a reason, right? Being rich is the biggest sin. 2 million is just your down payment. After it's done, you'll get the rest. How much? 8 million. You'll get 10 million in total. Aren't you afraid that I'll bite you after taking the money? If you work for me obediently, you can enjoy life after you get out, or you can live precariously with the 10 million. You have to be careful that I'll find you at all times. You won't even dare to use the money. Think about what kind of life you want. How many years is kidnapping? Under normal circumstances, 5 to 10 years, but you did well by exposing the person. I'll also arrange for a lawyer to reduce your sentence. You only need to stay in for 3 years. Qin Zhao said. Then I'll arrange for you to perform well during your sentence. You probably won't be in there for more than 2 years. After a long silence, Bull finally asked the question that concerned him the most. Will you silence me? You don't know me, so you don't know. Qin Zhao said. But you should trust Morgary's reputation, right? Bull couldn't help but look up at Qin Zhao. Morgary was the leader of the largest gang in LA. In the past 2 years, he'd been like an emperor in LA's underground world. However, he didn't just have an illustrious reputation. Another reason was that he had a great reputation. There had never been a case of a black on 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 on black 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 on black. He'd also said that even if the person he worked with came alone, he'd let them leave LA unharmed. This wasn't an exception either. It was a creed that Morgary followed to the end. In the past, Morgary had a line that sold some military weapons. After the two parties reached an agreement, the change in the market caused the price of the weapons to skyrocket. He still sold them at the agreed price. So, basically everyone on the streets of LA trusted Morgary now. As long as Morgary said it, he'd definitely fulfill his promise. So, when Qin Zhao mentioned Morgary, Bull somewhat believed him. How are you going to give me the rest of the money? Qin Zhao chuckled. If I only give you 2 million, will you take the job? Bull thought for a moment and nodded. I will. So, I don't need to give you any more promises. 2 million is enough for you to work for me. Even 200,000 is enough. Since I've made such a precious promise, it only shows my sincerity. Qin Zhao said calmly. Of course, if you want to know the exact steps, I'll explain it to you. You just need to open a joint account for your daughter. After each step, I'll transfer $2 million to the account until it's over. Unless you have a problem with a certain step, I'll stop the transfer. That's right, Chen Zhao said. Chen Zhao was also subtly reminding Bo that he knew about his precious daughter. Even if Chen Zhao wouldn't really do anything to her, it was still enough to intimidate him. Also, I need to remind you that if you change your statement halfway, you'll also be charged with perjury. It's not much lighter than your original crime. Plus, I won't let you walk out alive. So, from the moment you started this mission, you have to complete it. There's no turning back. I know. Bo knew. After all, the biggest taboo in their line of work was being a fence-sitter. A fence-sitter might end up in a situation where either side liked him. Chen Zhao's mission wasn't that hard to accept. In fact, it was much easier than the mission that he had originally thought would be a one-way trip. So, he didn't plan on betraying Chen Zhao. Chapter 26-22. Morgari, have you thought about what I told you yesterday? Hee. Mr. Modela, professional matters naturally have to be handled by professionals. Let me introduce you to someone. This person is the best at this kind of thing. In the past few years, he has made his move 3 times, and all 3 times he didn't fail. Oh? A professional? Who is it? Modela was immediately interested. His name is Bo. I'll give you his contact. Mr. Chen, I've received Matilla's call and recorded his voice. Bo had confirmed that the $2 million check was real. This made him extremely excited. It meant that his daughter's surgery fee was finally going to be paid. Moreover, he only needed to spend 2 or 3 years in prison before he could come out and enjoy life. Unlike now, where he couldn't see the future. He could only live in gangs and muddle through his days. Day after day, year after year, with no hope at all. A recording isn't enough. I need more evidence. A recording of your direct contact with him, an image of you meeting him. It's best if you can lure him to say something serious. I understand, but what should I do next? My wife will be missing for a few days, Chen said calmly. Chen had already told Fei Lai that she would be absent from work for a few days. Of course, she would be staying at the Supernatural Organization's headquarters for a few days. Fei Lai didn't object to this. After all, Chen was doing this to protect her and her family. An enemy eyeing them covetously would never know when they would bare their fangs. Such an enemy was too big of a threat. Chen would take the initiative and kill the enemy. This was the wisest choice. As for getting her to cooperate, that was no problem at all. After all, they were family. After arranging for Fei Lai to stay at the Supernatural Organization's headquarters, Chen called the police. A billionaire's wife had been kidnapped. This was a very bad thing. The police obviously had a lot of influence. Then, the police found the sports car abandoned by the road. Modela was very surprised. He'd only met Bo once and they just reached an agreement. Bo had succeeded in a day's time. Professional, as expected of a professional. Modela couldn't wait to call Bo. You've done well, Beauregard. Where are you? I'll send someone to bring you and the hostage over. I'm sorry, Mr. Modela. For the sake of everyone's safety, and for the plan to proceed smoothly, I don't want anyone else to know about this. So I won't let anyone else know about my current location other than you. Besides, it's safer with the hostage in my hands, Bo said, pretending to be calm. What do you mean, Bo? Although you asked me to kidnap them, I'm carrying out a mission now. All right then, cut off one of that woman's fingers. I'll give it to that yellow-skinned monkey as a gift. If you want to do it, you do it. I won't do it. What do you mean you won't do it? Do you know how I succeeded in my previous kidnappings? First of all, I couldn't hurt the hostages to ensure that I had a way out. Modela narrowed his eyes, still thinking of a way out. I really don't know how this idiot survived until now. He had kidnapped the wife of a billionaire. How could that guy let him go? All right then. Give me your hiding place. I'll go there myself. You can only come alone. Of course, I promise. Madala had already made up his mind to go over and kill Bull as well. That way, he wouldn't leak any information. Although Borlet had insisted that he should come alone, Borlet had not, but Madala clearly didn't intend to keep his promise. After hanging up the phone, Bull dialed Jen's number. He recounted the conversation he had with Madala again. You're saying that bastard plans to go to your hiding place himself? Yes. Chen's eyes flashed. Maybe you won't have to go to jail. You'll become a hero from a criminal. I don't know what you're talking about. Call the police station. Tell them that. Madala brought his men to the location Bull had given him. However, there was a rather large forest in front of them. They couldn't even tell the direction here, let alone find a cabin. This guy really knows how to hide, Madala said, spitting. At the same time, he said to his men behind him, all of you, prepare your guns and listen to my orders. Got it, boss. His subordinates answered confidently. It wasn't the first time they had done something like this with Madala. Meanwhile, in the cabin deep in the forest, Chen, Feilai, and Gaia were all here. Of course, Bull was here too. Bull, remember your mission. This hut used to be a resting place for hunters in the past. You came here to hunt, but you discovered that the hut was occupied. You took advantage of the time when those people left to rescue my wife. Chen took out a cut rope and threw it on the ground. Then you had a gunfight with them. This is your gun. Will the police believe me? Maybe the police won't believe you, but they believe my wife. Or do you want to follow the original script and go to jail for a few years? I'll listen to you, Mr. Chen. You won't be a criminal anymore. You'll be your daughter's hero, Chen said, patting Bull's shoulder. In an instant, Bo-Rai became excited. Huh! Chen Weiwei tilted her head. They're here. Get ready. Gaia, let's hide too. Okay. Gaia nodded. Feilai, Chen, and I will be outside. Got it. Feilai knew that Chen wouldn't go far, so she wasn't worried at all. Chen and Gaia hid nearby, secretly observing and monitoring the situation. Bull was leaning against the window of the cabin, pointing his gun outside. Don't be so nervous, Feilai said, crossing her legs. Chen's nearby. It'll be fine. I heard that a few people came. I only have a gun. Bull was still nervous. He wouldn't relax just because of Feilai's words. I need to hold on until the police arrive. That's because you don't know my husband, Feilai said calmly. I hope so. Bull was still worried. After all, the enemy's bullets wouldn't stop Chen's plan. Chapter 26-23. Boss, there's a small wooden house up ahead. I think it's Bull's hiding place. Good. Load all the bullets. Kill him as soon as you see him, and then take the woman away. Madala had been searching here for half an hour. He was sweating profusely and covered in mud. This had also worn away all of his patience. Boss, I heard that the woman is very pretty. Ha! After I'm done, it'll be your turn. Madala chuckled. Suddenly, there was a gunshot. The man who had been talking and laughing with him just a moment ago suddenly exploded into a beautiful flower of blood. Madala froze on the spot in fright. His body was immediately pushed to the ground by the man. Damn, what's going on? Madala yelled. Boss, the bullet came from the wooden house, the man guessed. It should be a shotgun. It's a person. Do you know who it is? It might be a hunter. Where's Bo? Where's that bastard? Madala roared. Kill the guy in the house, no matter who he is. Shoot, shoot! Another bullet splashed the dirt around Madala. Madala quickly hugged his head and pressed his face into the dirt. Boss, that guy is Bull. I saw him, I saw his face. Bastard! That bastard! Madala was furious. Kill the traitor and kill him! Kill him! I want him to die a horrible death! Chen looked at the battlefield. At the same time, he said to Gaia. Gaia, Matilla's car is parked outside the forest. There are some of his cigarette butts and used tissues. How do you know? Gaia asked, surprised. I just know. Gaia already understood Chen's intention. She was more familiar with such methods than Chen. If daily items like cigarette butts and tissues were found at the scene of the crime, it would become crucial evidence. Fei Lai was also a crucial witness. Madala would not be able to escape. Looks like smoking in the car isn't just harmful to health, Gaia said, smiling. I'll go now. Hurry up. The police are not far from here. Do you need me to shoot them? As long as you're happy. Give me the gun. Not far away, Gaia pointed to the first of Matilla's men who had been shot dead. His gun had also fallen to the ground. At this moment, no one noticed that a gun was flying by itself. Bol and Madala and his men were engaged in a tense exchange of shots. Oddly enough, Bol was unscathed. On the other hand, 4 of Matilla's men had already been shot dead. Other than Madala, there were still 3 people left. However, they didn't know that everything about them was being manipulated by someone. Even the bullets they fired were being controlled by someone else. Every one of Matilla's men who had been killed had been carefully manipulated by Chen. They were Chen's marionettes. Boss, he seems to be out of bullets. Kill your way in. I'm going to kill him. Madala roared furiously. Matilla's men speculated that Bol had run out of bullets. However, Madala still hid behind his men. Bol had killed 4 of his men. He did not want to be the next one. Bol, on the other hand, pulled the trigger several times in a row inside the wooden hut. *T, I'm out of bullets. What do we do? The police aren't here yet. Bol shouted nervously. Don't worry, they'll be here soon. Just then, the door was kicked open from the outside. 3 of Matilla's men rushed in first and pointed their guns at Bol. Bol, I'm going to kill you! Madala also raised his gun and pointed it at Bol. Just then, 3 of Matilla's men were shot in the head without any warning. Madala was stunned. Bol was also stunned. He turned around in confusion. Looking at the 3 bodies, his face was full of confusion. There were only a few of them in the hut. Bol and the woman didn't have guns, but why were their men shot in the head? He didn't understand. Suddenly, Fei Lai said to Bol, There's still 1 bullet in his gun. You took the bullet from me without caring about yourself, huh? Bol's chest was hit by a bullet. Madala was dumbfounded. Why did his gun suddenly fire on its own? He didn't pull the trigger. Why did this happen? Then, loud noises came from outside. Don't move! Hands up! More than a dozen police officers had already appeared outside the hut. They saw Madala raise his gun inside the door. Madala stood rooted to the spot in fear, not daring to move. He had never been pointed at by a dozen guns before. He had never known how scary it felt to have a gun pointed at him. Drop the gun! Now! Now! Madala did as he was told and dropped the gun. Then, a policeman pounced on Madala. What are you doing? Let me go! Do you know who I am? Just then, the other police officers came in one after another. Miss, are you okay? I'm fine. Luckily, this gentleman saved me. If it wasn't for him, I'd be in big trouble. We still need your help. Can you come back with us? What about him? Fei Lai pointed at Bol. I think he'll be taken care of. All right then. You've all been tricked by this woman. I'm the victim. They teamed up to trick me too. Pressed to the ground, Madala was still not obedient. How could he not realize that he'd been tricked? Bol and Chin had already teamed up. No, Bol had been introduced by Morguri. In other words, Morguri and Chen had teamed up too. But thinking about it, Morguri was a local power. How could Chen not be related to Morguri when he was rooted here? This meant that they knew each other. And they were very close. They teamed up to make him jump into a trap. Madala only wanted to contact his lawyer as soon as possible. Fei Lai glanced at Madala with a mocking expression. He still hadn't figured out the situation. It wasn't up to him now. What he said was the truth. Soon, Fei Lai was sent to the police station. After receiving the notice, Chen rushed to the police station. Anxiously, the couple acted out a bitter scene of reunion after a long separation. First, they hugged and kissed in front of everyone, then confessed. "How was my performance?" Fei Lai asked in a low voice. "If possible, I'd like the Oscars to give you an award," Chen replied. Chapter 26-24. The police found a lot of evidence at the crime scene. There was also Fei Lai's testimony. The conflict between Qin Zhao and Madala became key pieces of evidence as well. It had to be said that Madala was looking for trouble. When the police searched Matila's study, they found a document that transferred his assets for free. Thus, the police easily deduced that Madala had kidnapped Fei Lai to steal Qin Zhao's assets. The document was originally prepared for Qin Zhao. But now, it was Matila's death warrant. No matter how Madala tried to defend himself, it was useless. Moreover, when the police arrived at the small forest, they had been shot. Therefore, Matila's crimes were added to the list: assaulting a police officer, attempted murder, kidnapping for ransom, and unfair business competition. Moreover, his past crimes were investigated one by one. It was not an exaggeration to say that Madala would be kicked when he was down. With the help of some people with ulterior motives, Madala quickly turned from a billionaire to a notorious villain. On the other hand, Bo went from a street thug to a hero. Qin Zhao had the right to thank Bo Lai for it. Bo did not think that he would have such an encounter. He had been prepared to go to jail. But the result was completely different from what he had expected. Not only had his identity changed, but his social status had also changed. Before, he had only been a thug living in the slums. Now, he no longer had to worry about money. He no longer had to worry about his daughter's surgery fees. He no longer had to worry about his precarious life. Qin Zhao pushed open the door and saw Bo lying on the bed. Hearing the door, Bo turned his head and saw Qin Zhao walking in. Bo wanted to sit up immediately. Smiling, Qin Zhao placed the bouquet in the vase beside him. "Mr. Qin." "Yes, lie down. No need to sit up." Qin Zhao pulled a chair over. Bo was about to speak, but Qin Zhao suddenly waved his finger. "Wait." Qin Zhao found a bug under Bo's bed. "It's done," Qin Zhao said, smiling. "Mr. Qin, this is nothing. Madala is rich too. It's easy for him to bribe the doctors or nurses here. Then, it's just a small toy," Qin Zhao said nonchalantly and crushed the bug. Qin Zhao was surprised that he could discover the bug. To be precise, he had discovered the weak electric current emitted by the tapping device. "Your performance was very good, even better than I expected." Bo was afraid of Qin Zhao, because it seemed like Qin Zhao had already left that day. However, Bo knew that Qin Zhao had been secretly controlling the situation. He didn't know how Qin Zhao did it either. But during the gunfight he seemed to have become a sharpshooter. Bo had killed 5 of Matila's men with a mere shotgun. As for the last 3, their heads exploded without any warning right in front of him. After all, there was not a single bullet in his shotgun at that time. Plus, he and Fei Lai were unarmed in that small wooden hut at the time. In that kind of situation, the other 3 inexplicably had their heads explode. This was also his greatest confusion. Of course, he didn't get to the bottom of this. After all, Qin Zhao wouldn't tell him so easily. "Mr. Qin, it's what I should do." "What should be done?" That wasn't justice. Qin Zhao only smiled faintly. "There's nothing that you should or must do. It's just a choice, but you made the right choice." Qin Zhao stood up again. "This is my phone number. If you need me in the future, I can help you with one thing. At least in a qualified world, I should be able to solve most things. Of course, the prerequisite is that your request doesn't conflict with my principles." Qin Zhao stood up again. Bo silently put the number away. Qin Zhao turned and left. Then he went home. Because of Fei Lai's special experience, Robio gave Fei Lai a few days off. "Home is still the best." Phalai leaned against the oak tree, enjoying the lake breeze. Just then, Portia jogged over. Phalai, congratulations for coming back safely. Thank you. Huh, where's Zephyra? Didn't she come to work today? Chen Zhao asked. 2 days ago, Revla's face was full of anxiety. However, she happened to hear that Miss Phalai had been kidnapped, so she asked me to help her apply for leave. She left in a hurry, Portia said. Boss, could Revla have encountered some trouble? Chen Zhao picked up the phone and called Zephyra. But the call didn't go through. It was outside the server's range. Chen Zhao could only put down the phone helplessly. Did Zephyr leave any way to contact you? No. Chen Zhao's heart became heavy again. Because he had to get rid of Matala 2 days ago. Thus, Chen Zhao hadn't paid attention to other problems. He'd promised Zephyr that he would help her. But because of Matila's matter, Chen Zhao had neglected Zephyr. Moreover, Zephyr was a strong-minded person. She would hardly ask for help from others casually. And when she really opened her mouth, that would be when she was in big trouble. She would only speak when she had no other choice. Shen, did something happen to Zephyr? A few days ago, Zephyr said that there's a very powerful enemy. She's not confident if she's alone, Chen Zhao said seriously. Portia was beside him, so Chen Zhao didn't explain too clearly. However, Phalai could roughly understand what Chen Zhao meant by powerful enemy. Is there a way to find her current location? Maybe I can find the organization behind her. Chen Zhao had no clue now. He could only find clues from the Dragon Slayer organization behind her. Although Zephyr had already left the organization, the information she'd received should be from the organization. However, the information she obtained should have been obtained from the Dragon Slayer organization. Thus, the organization should know where Zephyr was. However, to contact the organization, Qin Zhao needed the supernatural organization's help. I'm going out, Qin Zhao said. Go and bring Zephyr back safely. I'll try. Qin Zhao hurried to the supernatural organization. However, Qin Zhao didn't have high hopes for this. The supernatural organization was now considered the top supernatural organization in North America. In the entire world, it could be considered a second-tier organization. But purely in terms of strength, foundation, and intelligence, it was the weakest. Thus, Qin Zhao really didn't have much confidence in the supernatural organization's intelligence ability. 9 Heaven's Divine Emperor. Chapter 26-25. President, I've heard of the Dragon Slayer Society, West said. But they're very mysterious and have almost no connection to the spiritual world. It won't be easy to find them. Okay, try your best. I'll see if I can get more information from other places. Qin believed that if the supernatural organization had enough time, it was not impossible to find out about the Dragon Slayer Society. But the key problem was that Qin did not have time to wait for information from the supernatural organization. More accurately, Refra did not have that much time. So, Qin could not pin his hopes on the supernatural organization. After leaving the supernatural organization, Qin called Zhang Tianyi. Hey, old Zhang, do you know about the Dragon Slayer Society? Yes, why? Zhang Tianyi sounded very unfriendly. You have a grudge against the Dragon Slayer Society? Of course. The Dragon Slayer Society chased after my granddaughter-in-law. Do you think I have a grudge against them? Then do you know where to find the Dragon Slayer organization? Are you going to cause trouble for them? Not in theory. Then in reality? No. No, I'm not familiar with them. Really? With the grudge between us, if I could find them, are you sure they'd still exist? Can't you find them? I don't. Ask Blood Mary or Bifla. Chen hung up in disappointment. Then, he called Bifla and 23rd generation Blood Mary. However, the two did not have any information about the Dragon Slayer Society. Chen thought that the Dragon Slayer Society should be a famous organization. Therefore, he should know quite a lot of people. But after walking around, he realized that the Dragon Slayer Society was not as strong as he thought. Chun was rather disappointed. The Dragon Slayer Society seemed to be a small organization. They had a certain amount of fame, but they were not very powerful. This could be seen from the three bosses' attitude toward the Dragon Slayer Society. All three knew about the Dragon Slayer Society, but the three had no way to find them. At least in a short time, they could not find the Dragon Slayer Society. Either the Dragon Slayer Society was so well hidden that even they could not find them, or the three bosses were not interested in them, so they did not even need to contact them. At this moment, the Marx family's territory was completely shrouded in fog. This was no longer the sunny manor. This place was like a ghost town, making one's hair stand on end. Thousands of spiritualists had gathered outside the Marx family's residence. All of them came from all over the world, and there were spiritualists from North America. There were also spiritualists from China. Even Varian couldn't believe it. How many sins had Tim Morhaber committed? He was actually able to attract the attacks of so many spiritualists. Varian Marx found her teammate in the crowd. "Michael, what's going on? Why are there so many people here?" "I don't know either." Michael was a short man, about 1.5 meters tall, with a baby face. In fact, Michael was already 45 years old. He was the youngest among the dragon slayers to awaken his dragon bloodline. It was also because of his dragon clan bloodline that caused his body to stagnate, and he maintained the appearance of a 12-year-old. "How did you send the message?" "I just found an acquaintance, and told him that Tim Morhaber was here. I don't know how it spread, but so many people came. There were so many spiritualists here, and they basically formed a small group of dozens. These small groups of spiritualists did not communicate with others. This was because the dragon slayers did not have much contact with most spiritualists. That was why Varian didn't recognize any of the spiritualists present. Just then, a small group of people came over from not far away. The leader of the group was a girl who looked young. When Varian Marx saw the girl, she lifted her chin slightly. With a somewhat arrogant tone, she said, "Isn't this the genius girl, Refra? I heard that you've already quit the Dragon Slayers. Why are you suddenly here? Do you find the ordinary life boring? Are you here for some excitement?" Refra glanced at Valerie Marx expressionlessly. Varian Max was her senior. When she first entered the industry, she had heard of Varian Max's name. She was at the top of the Dragon Slayers. Refra had once killed a giant dragon. Among the Dragon Slayers, she had the title of Genius Girl. She was the youngest Dragon Slayer in history to kill a giant dragon. However, in her career as a Dragon Slayer, Varian had killed 6 giant dragons. She had also killed 6 giant dragons. This was also a record. An unprecedented record. She had surpassed any dragon slayer in the past. And it would be difficult for her to have such a glorious record in the future. In terms of reputation, Varian was much more powerful than Refra. The two were not on the same level at all. However, the two of them were like natural enemies. Every time they met, they would not be nice to each other. "Varian, did you call all these people here?" Zevra went straight to the point. A gloomy expression appeared on Varian Marx's face. Then, she shook her head silently. "The situation doesn't seem right." Varian Marx didn't hide her guess. "These spiritualists are all from different forces, and none of them are alone. They seem to have obtained some information, and the information they know might be different from others. Moreover, they don't intend to share the information they have. Do you know any spiritualists here?" "I don't know any of them. I can only recognize the symbols of a small number of organizations. They should be spiritualists from small to medium-sized organizations or sections. I'm worried that this is Tim Morhaber's trap." "Then do you have any good ideas?" "No," Refra replied coldly. Although they did not like each other, when there was trouble, the first thing they would do was to cooperate and not undermine each other. This was the custom of dragon slayers because their enemies were dragons that were far stronger than them. If they still schemed against each other and stabbed each other in the back, they would definitely not be able to defeat the giant dragons. Can I leave here? Jane Fankel asked. Eyre stood beside her. Although he did not speak, his eyes conveyed the same meaning. When I came in, the outside was already blocked by a few groups of spiritualists, Refra said, glancing at Jane Fankel. You're tuning into the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.